Testing, testing. Yep.
Okay. Well, good evening. I've got 6 o'clock, so I think we can go ahead and get started. I will call this meeting of the Manitou Springs City Council to order. This is a work session for July the 13th, 2021. And with the city clerk positioned over to operating the PowerPoint slides, I'm going to do the roll call tonight. So, Councilor Bremler?
Here.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune?
Present.
Councilor Chandler?
Present.
Councilor Johnson?
Here.
Councilor Shada?
Here.
Councilor Wolf? You're fine, you're fine. And the mayor is also here, so we're all here, all good. Okay, first item of business is, well, we only have one item of business tonight, and that's hearing the department-wide mid-year update of goals. So we're going to get a progress report and maybe a little bit of a little dream forecasting on the other end of that. So looks like we're going to start off with Public Works. We have Jeff Jones as our first presenter. So Jeff, as is customary, if you give us your full name and your address, and then you've got the floor. Oh, excuse me? Oh, sure, okay. Jeff, could you turn yours off a second?
I got it. Yeah, thank you. I just want to make a couple of opening statements. Each department head is going to be doing their presentation, and it's an overview of where we are to date and then looking at what we're going to do to finish the year. All of you received the Big Rocks spreadsheet during our your goal setting, so this just enhances that information that you received. We would ask that at the end of each one, we'll just ask you to ask questions for that individual or that department, and then, because I don't want you to wait to the very end and you are like, what question do I have, right? So at the end of each one, we'll open it up for questions and move forward from there. And again, this is high overview, but would appreciate if you have questions or concerns to address them, and we'll move forward. I want to give them lots of recognition, and Alex is the one that put together the PowerPoint, so a shout out to Alex, as all the department heads fed the information to him, but they've worked very hard at putting this together and deserve a lot of credit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Denise. I appreciate it. Jeff Jones, Public Works Director, 329 Clarksley Road, Manitou Springs. So I'll be the first to kick off the goals update for mid-year. Majority of mine will be talking about projects because we have a lot of projects. And then we'll go into a couple things that we want to do down the road with our water systems. Is that better? Okay. All right, so we'll start off with Soda Springs Phase 1, just a quick overview before we are with that. We're almost complete with Phase 1. Monarch Landscaping has been doing the work. This is a GOCO-funded project. I'm sure you've walked by and you've seen the nice stone slabs that's put in place, the climbing wall, the beachfront, and some of the waterfront area that's down there. They're planning on closing up and completing the first part of this phase this month here in just a few weeks. So we're getting close to having that done, and then of course it'll be progressing on later on. We'll forecast for the Phase 2 of that project. Okay. Next slide, maps. This is a $3.8 million project that's funded by CDOT and PPRTA. We have Wildcat Construction that is there doing the work. I'm sure you've noticed the new concrete work that's going in for curb and gutter. They're progressing along well. They've made a better lane configurations now so cars can get through there. It's been a very difficult and a very rough place for anybody to drive through. There's been a few flat tires going through there. So they're progressing well on that too. They are projecting to be done with that in late August. Of course, they'll still have it at the end, have to do the landscaping and do the lighting and everything else down there in the bump outs and the crosswalks. But that was progressing along well. So we have Soda Springs we're looking to get done here in July. Maps in August. And then we also have, well, I'll get to Becker's here in just a second. Let's go to Ruxton next on that. We're on a design review for that right now. We've picked Well, first Drexel Burrow did perform the survey, and then we have JR Engineering who's doing the design work, and that was approved by City Council a few weeks ago. That is a $512,000 design, and then once they finish the design, we're projecting a kickoff of that project after Dole and I spoke today with them of the utility undergrounding sometime in October. So that'll be challenging, to say the least, for the Ruxton corridor with all the activity going up there, but they'll do it in segments. So try not to do the whole thing at once. Next slide, please. Creek Walk Trail, phase 3 and 4. Phase 3 is from the pool to the Chamber of Commerce. That has already been surveyed by TRS Surveying. And then phase 4 will be from the Chamber to Hiawatha Gardens, and that is under design by Jacoby. That is a Colorado Department, CDOT, and a local match funded project. The right-of-way plans have been completed, and the environmental part has been cleared and performed. And there's also a TAP grant that Dole was able to get through CDOT to help pay for some of this. And we'll start seeing that move along here pretty soon as well. Then the next one I was going to speak about was Becker's Bridge. So Becker's is under contract. It's a $3 million URA project from Native Sons. They have already poured the bridge deck. They are pouring the curb and gutter there. And then paving of the roads is supposed to take place in the next few weeks. So you're going to see a drastic improvement down that road. I'm sure you already have. Too far away? Okay. Then after that, we were waiting on Comcast to get some work done, but we told them we're not waiting on them anymore, and we're going to force them to bore their cables underneath all of our paving and our roadways, and then we're going to charge them for it. Because they were supposed to be out there and do some work, and they held off, and we can't do that with a large contract. So they're aware of that now. So that'll come in afterwards, right before the landscaping takes place. Next slide, please. Hiawatha Gardens, D2 demolition is just about complete with their non-historic portion of the building. And then that'll be in the hands, obviously, of the city council to decide what we're going to do with it next. City Hall remodel. We are using the University of Colorado Denver Architecture Department and their students to do different architectural drawings and different layouts. And I think there's seven or eight layouts they've done that we're looking at, and they'll also get grades for this in their class. And it's at a very cheap, reduced price for us. And that will go, obviously, to Denise and Roy to look over. The Parks and Facilities Master Plan is about 80% complete. Actually, it's probably about 90 now. We requested more detail in the study because it just gave suggestions of what things would cost without telling us what they were talking about, as far as suggesting what they would cost. So we're asking for more detail on that and a better layout of specifics, how we can get there and better utilize this study and reduce our number of facility work orders. And this is through Cushing Terrell, and this is a $100,000 project. Next slide, please. Downtown improvements. This effort is for ADA, American Disability Act improvements at Wichita restrooms. I had put out RFI to get information with people who has more knowledge than I do about ADA compliance and get some suggestions, and I got some replies back from that. And now we're going to move forward with building a scope of work and then putting that out for RFP to get bids on that. And I hope to have this going here pretty soon and completed before the end of the year, if possible. Next one is the National Forest permitting. The GIS mapping of the reservoir is complete, and this is agreement between us and the United States Forest Service for our reservoir that supplies the city with water to go across the U.S. forest land and be able to utilize it and respect their rights and the federal regulations that go with it. So we're very close to having that signed and completed. We just had a fee we have to pay, which is not a problem. It's a small fee, and we'll have that in place, and I believe it's good for 50 years, a long time. So it's a big thing for us to get done, and we won't have to repeat it for quite some time. Next slide, please. Okay, and going to a few operational things. Just to give you an idea, as of May, I know we're in July now, but as of May on our KPIs, we filled at least 180 potholes. There's a lot of potholes, and there's a lot to do, and we keep doing it on a daily basis. During our snow removal, we performed about 953 hours of snow removal this last snow season, which is quite a bit. Road improvements, I have tracks construction that we put out for bidding, and they won the contract. They will be paving Clarksley, Mountain View, Clarksley was already done. They'll be paving Shelton, Spurs Short, and Fountain Place here next month, about the second week of August. Clarksley and Mountain View was just approved for paving through, obviously, the council and from the PPRTA, and they're finishing up today. They were milling the last part of the road on the bottom part of Mountain View. That will be paved, and that will complete that project. That's a very, very, very large project with $1.1 million worth of sewer lines and water lines being put in there, which alleviates a huge problem we had before with a lot of sewer backups, a lot of sewer flooding in people's basements. So big deal, and we're close to getting that one done, which will be great. And some new road surfaces up there. Excuse me. Public Works Water and Sewer, the hydroelectric plant at the water treatment, hydroelectric system at the water treatment plant is also near completion. Our contractor's Flatiron Construction Company. This is about a $295,000 project. And what we're going to get from this is we're going to get a huge reduction in the kilowatts that we use for the city. And in turn, that reduction in kilowatt usage is going to go to the customers, the consumers, and they're going to pay a lower price from what we have. We already have part of our system that's on solar system, and by using the hydro now, it's going to reduce it even more. So it's very smart and economical for everybody to do it, as well as very green to do it. As I mentioned before, the Mountain View Clarksley sewer water main replacement is nearly done. That was a funded loan for the state of Colorado revolving fund, and it's near completion. The Mesa, the 2 million gallon Mesa tank that we have presently in place that supplies storage water for the citizens of Manitou as well as fire suppression. We had a study done a few years ago where we had divers go down in the tank, and there needs to be some rust mitigation that needs to take place. So we have to drain the tank out eventually in order to do that, and then recoat it with epoxy. So before we can drain the tank, obviously we want to get out of fire season. So we're going to wait until the colder months, obviously. Approximately maybe November timeframe, maybe a little before that, maybe September. So prior to doing that, we have to put in some valving, some new valving. So our first step, it's a two-step process, is we're going to put in the valving, some new valving, and I'll tell you why we're putting in some of it. And then we're going to drain the tank. It'll take approximately 44 to about 55 days to do. They're going to do sandblasting, rust mitigation, any welding they have to do in there. They're going to recoat it with epoxy, and we're going to fill it back up. So during that time, all of our lines will still be charged directly from the plant, and we'll also have the Crystal Hills tank will also be charged. Okay. Of course, we want to wait during the winter months to decrease the possibility of wildfires and stuff we'd have to use the water for. It is definitely needed. We need to do it. That'll be the first step, is the valves, then the rust mitigation, and then what we want to do after that is construction possibly of a new water tank. Now, of course, this is way down the road, and I believe this is from the American Rescue Funds. And we've been pricing it out for another identical 2 million gallon tank. The price is approximately about $1.6 million. It's very high. As we all know, steel prices have been going through the roof on everything. But if we do a 1 million gallon tank, we still increase our volume of water storage by 50%, and it's only $1 million. And without getting into too much of the funds talk, that's Becca's area, we do have enough money through those funds to do that work. So what we would gain water-wise is we would gain repair of the old tank with valving, which is desperately needed. One is a tie-in valve that we do up front that would tie the two tanks together. And what that does for you, it gives you a much larger capacity, which you could take one down for maintenance while you're working on the other one at a time, and never be without a water supply for the city, which is a big deal. And most cities have that, a redundant feed type system. So that's on down the line. There'll be more about that one. We also had scheduled to finish 4 sewer manhole additions in Pilot Knob area. That's put on hold for a little bit right now due to some other requirements. We will get to it as soon as possible. Hopefully, toward the end of the year, we may have to push it to next year. Fire hydrants. We've been doing fire hydrant flushing with a company. We have approximately 350 fire hydrants. There's approximately 20 left to do, and there's only 4 currently out of service. Those 4 that are currently out of service are awaiting parts, and we have them coming in soon. One is on Puma Path, Washington Avenue, one is on Crystal Hills, and one is on Manitou Place. Fire department's completely aware of it, and they've made accommodations if they have to have fire in that area to go to the next fire hydrant until we get those 4 fixed. But for 4 only to be out of order, we had many, many more than that. Out of 350 now is a very excellent number to have, percentage-wise. So we're getting toward it. Also, sewer lines, we've cleaned 22,344 linear feet of sewer lines, which has decreased our sewer calls that we get for our guys to go out and perform. Next slide. Yeah, stormwater. I have hired a stormwater consultant to come on board because the folks that we had on staff that were stormwater experts have since left. So we are getting certified with our folks, and we have Mr. John Chavez on board, who has had 20-plus years experience with the county as a stormwater expert, and he is helping us right the ship and get everything right on that. He helped us fill out our MS4 stormwater system conveyance permittings, and he is helping with our drainage systems maintenance and inspections, as well as our compliance with state regulations governing stormwater collection and distribution. He's been a tremendous help. So we're getting everything ready, and we are compliant with the state since he's helped us with our paperwork. We also plan to install a new drainage panel along Pine Ridge Avenue, and that's scheduled for late summer or early fall of this year. And lastly, the cleanup along Sutherland area. We're waiting till the construction's over with, and we're going to clean the creek area down through there. We'll be asking for volunteers, and we'll probably get kids from the school to also come down. And also, we've already cleaned Fountain Creek, but we'll have a big, huge cleanup that'll take place in the fall, at the end of the summer, and then we'll have another one, obviously, in the springtime to get that done. So with that, I'll open up to any questions you may have. I know it's a lot of information. I apologize, but we had to condense it.
Mr. Bremner?
Thanks, Jeff. Good overview.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious about the hydroelectric plant by the water treatment plant. Is that new? And is it right there at the water treatment plant?
Yes, sir. It's inside of the water treatment. It's brand new. And we'd be glad to show anybody that wants to go up there and take a look at it. They're almost done with it. And what we're going to do when it does get done is we're going to do some calculations of how much KWs that we're saving off of it. And then we'll get an idea of how quick we'll get our return from it, which will be pretty fast. But yes, it's brand new inside.
So how's it working? I'm just wondering, is there like a flow of water coming into the water treatment plant that's so strong that you're able to
It
generate
is.
hydroelectricity?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. It's a hydroelectric plant. There's a turbine in there with a wheel. The water coming in is your force, your power that turns it, creates energy, and it cuts down on the power.
That's great. Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Counselor Chandler, please.
Thank you, Jeff. I have a couple of questions about the water tank.
Yeah.
As we all know, with climate change, water is such a precious resource, and I really appreciate the analysis that was done with the diver report. It sounds, what I'm hearing you say is that there are some repairs that will not be able to wait until the new tank is built. So you mentioned the valve and the lining, are those the only two critical pieces of the tank that need to be repaired before the new tank is built? And then I have one more question.
That's a very good question. So in order to, before we can build the new tank, we had to put the valves in, otherwise you won't be able to tie the tanks together. So there's an inline valve that comes from the existing Mesa tank, and then there's a valve that's gonna tie the two together. We have to get those installed first before we can empty out one tank completely and build the other one, fill it up. And have the minimal time of less water, let's put it that way. So to answer your other question, or your main question is, yes, the valves are the first step in it, and then the rust mitigation on the inside, and then the epoxy coating.
And so I also heard you say that that it would cost about 1.6 million for a 1 million,
2 million.
2 million is, so it's my understanding from the CARES Act funding that we are going to be receiving around 1.3. Is there a next size tank that we would be considering that would be more than that? And if so, is that worth considering given our current climate crisis issues that the city might want to consider?
Absolutely, and we've talked about that. So we've also priced out a 1 million gallon tank. And that 1 million gallon tank obviously is half the size, but it'll still give us a 50% increase of what we have right now, and it's priced at $1 million. So
And-
we're leaning more toward that one, of course, with council approval, because of, like you said, because of, money and everything.
Do we know how much a larger tank would cost? I mean, if we were to go to the next size of tank, has that been considered?
You mean like a 3 million gallon tank? Right now, what we have up there is a
So-
2 million gallon
Okay.
tank. So the Mesa tank, the existing one's 2 million.
Okay,
If we build a match to that, it's 1.6 million.
okay,
But if we build like a 1 million gallon tank, it's about $1 million.
okay. And my last question is, what's the city doing to consider really moving Manitou into the solar energy future? What are things are being considered from a solar perspective?
So great question. Me being an electrician, that's pretty close to my heart. Truly believe in the solar power is wonderful. It saves, first it helps you go green, cuts down the carbon emissions. It saves you a lot of money. Part of this facility study that's being done, the parks facility, is addressing part of that, of how we can at least start by doing that. Now, we all know that if you get LED bulbs, it helps you and it cuts down, or if you do certain other things, it helps. But the parks, that's one of the reasons we asked for the parks facility study, to give us some more ideas how we can lean toward that way. Even, watering the parks, if we can use solar power to turn on our watering systems, why not? I mean, Colorado, as my wife likes to say, it's closer to the sun here, so it gets pretty hot, which is true, but, anything we can do. But we'll get more insight on that, the going green, by when that study gets back.
Thank you, that's all I have.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other council members? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks. Couple questions. One.
Sure.
Soda Springs Park, Phase 1, you indicated that Phase 1 would be completed by probably the end of this month.
Yes, ma'am.
And by Phase 1, I just want to clarify that that's what they're currently working on. It's the west end of the park.
It is. It's the
Okay.
tip right there.
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
very end.
So it's not like Phase 1 of that particular project. That is a.
That
whole
is
section
Phase
of the
1.
park.
So there's
Okay.
3 phases, 1, then 2 in the middle, then 3 up by the pavilion.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thanks. And then I just wanted to confirm, the parks and facilities, you have it listed as a master plan. Is it a master plan or a capital improvements plan?
It's a capital improvement plan.
Okay, thanks.
That was probably a misprint.
That makes me feel much better, thank you. And then lastly, you mentioned that you've cleaned 22.3 thousand feet of sewer in the past 6 months or so.
Yes.
How many linear feet do we have in Manitou? Like what percentage?
Well, that's a good question. Denise prepped me to get that, and I don't have the answer for you, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get smart and get the answer, and I'll get it to you.
Okay.
Exactly how many we have.
Yeah, no, it's very encouraging to hear that.
She said someone would ask, and I completely bombed it and forgot to get it.
And I didn't even ask that of her.
We
but
have a lot.
So it was a good prediction on her part. No, it was very good to hear you say that even with that amount cleaned, that is really reducing our
It has.
midnight emergencies in people's
It really
cellars.
has. A little preventative maintenance goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
May I?
Denise, please?
Yeah, I also just want to mention that helps with our SRSA claims, which also helps lower our SRSA premiums. So that's one of the things that SRSA has asked from us, is really putting together our entire plan. And I asked that of Roy and Jeff, that I need an entire plan for the year and how we're going to clean them and how many square feet, how many feet we need to do by month. So it is making a huge difference.
And don't we have a lot of that data in our capital improvement plan for wastewater and sewer anyway? It seems like that should be part of the plan, how much we're anticipating to clean or to maintain every year.
Wouldn't be part of our capital, because that's not capital, but it would be part of our work plan.
Yeah, operational work plan, yeah.
I'm laughing because I thought there was already a 10-year plan for that by year, so anyway.
There may have been, Nancy, and, it's one of the things that we're working on, is, a lot of, we're working on where some plans are, how to look at it. I know Roy and Jeff have been working on the past water plan to make sure that we have it, but it's not a capital plan. It's probably more of a work plan of what we need to clean every year, especially to keep up with SRSA and make sure that we're managing those costs.
If I could, I'd like to just add one more project that I completely forgot to put on the slides. We have a CDBG grant, a project that is going to be for ADA improvements on the sidewalk on Cannon Avenue from Washington toward the post office there. Then it's going to go across the road, run down in front of the Park Avenue, past the Mineral Springs, and then stop at a crosswalk that goes across the Soda Springs Park there. That will be starting. We pushed it off for a month so we could give the merchants a break, obviously, of all the construction, because there's so much. And that will be starting in about the second week of August. There'll still be traffic that can go through there one way. Obviously, it's already one-way traffic anyhow, but I should say one parking lane will become a lane, a vehicle lane, depending on which side of the road they're doing. That way they can get through. So you'll see that. And then one more, of course, the gas pipeline, the gas line that Colorado Springs is installing. They'll be installing the part on Pawnee and Manitou Avenue this month. And the reason they have to do it this month, and I know it's the worst spot in the world, is because they got to get it done before school starts. They have to get it done before school starts and all the school buses start coming through, because they're having to divert traffic over across High Street, and it'd be a nightmare over there for them to do that. So, good thing is this: Maps we're getting done. It's going to be done soon. Soda Springs is going to be done. Becker's is going to be done. Then will be about a month, about 5 weeks worth of Cannon Avenue ADA improvements, about a month to 2 months improvements ADA down at Wichita Lot. It'll take only about 3 or 4 weeks maybe to do that at Pawnee to get the gas line in there. And then we'll be a lot better off for construction, because I know it's been a nightmare. But that's what we had on the books. That's what we had money funded for, and we're going to do our best to get it all done. And when we're done, it'll be a much better place.
Jeff, will you give them an update about the gas line on Becker's, just so that everybody's aware that when that is happening also, and why we postponed that for a few months?
Yeah, we postponed that due to some construction down there, and that's going to be, I believe, October, is what Dole said, that they're going to push for the gas pipeline to go through there. That's not going to slow down Native Sons to go ahead and complete their curb and gutter work, as well as their paving work down there, and then some landscaping. Becker's is going to look really nice. I really like the way it's starting to turn out, and I think you'll be very pleased, especially for folks who live down there. I think you'll find that it's very, very nice, and the landscaping is going to be really pretty. And then, of course, our goal using Wildcat is to make sure that Maps on the west end down here turns out better, or as good or better as it did on the east end down there toward Colorado Springs.
Great. Do we have any further questions or comments for Mr. Jones? Denise?
I just want to clarify one thing, and that's the city hall. We got that from Adola. It was $6,000 they paid for CU Denver to be able to their architect group to come in and really look at City Hall, and if we wanted to remodel it, what that might look like. So we will be bringing that to council in September, and we'll be asking for direction from you at that point. So there's no clear direction, it's just being able to do it. Many cities have used this, and then they take whatever design happens to an architect, and it really saves about $200,000 by doing it, and it gives the students a lot of experience also. So they'll be coming in September, presenting to you, and we'll ask for direction of what do you want us to do at that point. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, Mr. Jones, thank you very much. Carry
Thank
on.
you.
Keep up the good work, huh? Okay, great. And next, we're going to hear from the Planning Department. So Christine?
Good evening. I'm Christine Lowenberg, Planning Director for the City of Manitou Springs. Let's see. So the goal of the Planning Department and with regard to community development is to partner with local residents and businesses through consistent administration of our municipal zoning and subdivision code. We need to have a strong but necessary approach that involves verification of basic assumptions and practices. We've been heavily engaged in that this year in two ways. That's what this slide is really intended to address. Staff have been participating in quality management training. The training is to teach staff how to challenge accepted processes and look for ongoing opportunities for improvement. I've been pursuing this under the Lean Six Sigma Quality Improvement Approach, PDSA, which is Plan, Do, Study, Act. Each week we're looking for opportunities to find measurable improvement. It's a growth exercise for staff, and I believe it's yielding positive results. Examples of ongoing efforts and outcomes to improve the quality of the review and determination include verification of assumptions such as zoning designations. This has revealed discrepancies. The staff in the Planning Department are actively working to create a singularly authoritative zoning map. I think this is important to note. Something we discovered when I came in is that of all the zoning maps hanging on our walls, none of them are signed. None of them have been officially adopted. So we've been working through that piece by piece. It's occasionally caused us to hit a few bumps along the road, but I think in the long run it's important because what we'll end up with is a singularly authoritative zoning map. That's important for us as a city, and it's also important for businesses and property owners. Secondly, enacting sufficiency reviews upon receipt of applications before processing them for hearings. To this end, it ensures completeness of applications before they're sent on to HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, or Planning Commission. A specific example of this is our enhanced rigor around variance application processes. It's ensuring a better application for a variance by the time it gets to the Planning Commission, making the process easier both for the applicant and the planning commissioners. Third, we're enacting quality control measures such as a second reviewer programmer for determinations. This involves not only review of the actual documents turned in, but also conducting case presentations to one another and their recommendation being discussed with a peer. Fourth, we're better managing SOPs, which is the procedural part of the municipal zoning code. Examples of this that we've engaged in have been public notices, as well as the U.S. Forest Service permit for the caretaker's cabin near a reservoir. This is an activity that happens once every 30 years. There was no procedure for that, so we're documenting that among other opportunities. We expect also this year, coming out of the zoning code update project, many SOPs. Recalling the SOPs are the procedural part of our governance document. The second way that we're improving the partnership with the community is using project management approaches and tools to improve the development of applications for applicants. We are streamlining those application processes. We're not requiring redundancy in submitting forms over and over. We're identifying opportunities for streamlining there. We're also using internal checklists to better communicate with one another where we are on different applications and processes. Next slide. Thanks. So this slide is meant to address some of the projects and accomplishments so far in 2021. I'll address the municipal zoning and subdivision code update later. The Carnegie Library project, with that, you all are receiving updates every 60 days, so I won't go into that. The fire training facility, this is a project that I believe the fire department will update us later on in the presentation. Planning has been working closely in the development and understanding what the needs are for that. We recently hosted with the fire department a public outreach meeting, and that was highly informative. We gained a lot of great information, not just about the project itself, but what the needs of the community are. With regard to fire and hazard mitigation, there's been a couple of really interesting things that have been going on there. We've been working closely with the Manitou Springs Volunteer Fire Department to improve regional coordination and data exchange. So previous to this, it had been a number of years before the community had participated in these regional efforts. We've applied for grants to improve mitigation efforts around the city. We're anxious to hear about these. In June, planning coordinated a preparedness discussion between the departments to look for opportunities to improve response efforts by operational and business departments. So basically asking the question, do we all know what we need to do when we need to do it? And what are the barriers? It was a really great dialogue and conversation and should lay a foundation for the next quarterly meeting with staff. With regard to Plan Manitou and the hazard mitigation plan, we've just received notification of a major grant to help us in the update to the hazard mitigation portion. Given the evolving weather patterns that can negatively impact our region, this is really important because it's not only important to figure out how to mitigate, but to adapt to the challenges that are before us now. Work process planning on this will begin later this year. That's anticipated to be a 2022 project, but the award is fantastic. We're really excited about that. Later in the year, there'll be other updates under open space and trails. There are ongoing projects, including the several-year archaeological survey. Dylan Becker, one of the planners in the department, is actively engaged in that with that kind of background. And then on the second half of the slide, I want to note on the accomplishments. What's listed up there in terms of property improvement permits, use tax, I'd like to put those in perspective for you, what that means historically. So year to date, we have issued 274 property improvement permits. This is a 10% increase over 2020. In 2020, it was a year that we were above 2019, recalling how busy that was. With regard to use tax and fees collected, that $65,753.74 is a 40% increase over 2020 year to date. It's a tremendous increase, and that has largely to do with the commercial projects in town. All of the PIPs, or property improvement permits, that were issued were associated with modifications to existing structures. So there are some, as I said, commercial that are underway in the URA, but by and large, with regard to houses, these were existing expansions, renovations, and improvements. So continuing to improve our community. And finally, development review applications, there's a number of 32 up there. That's 32 year to date. Each of those takes somewhere between 45 and 75 hours worth of work. So that 32 number is a 39% increase over 2020. So we've just seen a tremendous influx of significant applications this year. Next slide. This slide is addressing the historical survey process. So this is in regard to a fairly significant initiative here in Manitou Springs. As you know, Manitou Springs is a leader in historical preservation, not just in the region, but the state and also in the country. So this major initiative is the development of a historical survey process. The city of Manitou Springs received funding through History Colorado's Certified Local Government CLG grant program in 2020 to develop a survey and inventory plan for over 1,000 buildings or structures. This is the first preservation study in more than 10 years that's been undertaken by the city. The historic district remains largely undocumented and is in need of a comprehensive strategy. This plan is in final draft form and is expected to receive final approval from HPC next week. Another project that's related to the historical aspects of our community would be working with the chamber on updating the walking tour brochure. And then also the planning department is in the process of finalizing updates and installation to historic plaques around the city. Next slide, please. The municipal zoning and subdivision code update project is certainly the most time-consuming project within the department this year. We have, you all are very familiar with the project. We come every 4 weeks or so right now and are providing updates in a joint session with Planning Commission. So I'll defer to that process for an update there. But as you know, the subject matter and content review includes what are the community priorities, design standards, environmental considerations, parking, and administrative processes. Stakeholder engagement is ongoing. The word cloud you see on this slide is actually from the Climate Action Work Group. And so as we have with you all, when we meet with stakeholder groups, we go through a number of ways to gather their opinions and make it interesting for them to understand what they're saying, and as well for folks like you, it's easy to discern when you look at something like this what the priorities of different stakeholder groups are. Next slide, please. This final slide is just a summary of some of the projects that fall under the SIP portion of our budget. The public art project, this is actually being managed by an employee in the Parks Department at this time, but it's underway. The mobility study implementation, again, that's spearheaded by Roy Cheney, Deputy City Administrator, and he will be updating you later on that. And then, of course, the municipal zoning code project update. With regard to the historic survey that I mentioned just a moment ago, the CLG, as we wrap that up this year, in this year's budget, there are match dollars set aside for the actual survey process, but we don't anticipate that the survey process will begin until later this year and will likely roll into 2022. So with that, that's my presentation. Thank you for your ongoing interest and concern in the planning department. Are there any questions?
Questions, council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks. Hi. One question, the zoning code update. Your slide says that it's due, as we all know, the final product's potentially in December of this year. And I was wondering if council can expect any written segments of it before that, drafts that we can, I worry about, having just something so huge right at the end and have undue pressure. So will we be getting it in segments?
Great question, and yes, you will be getting it in segments. So we'll anticipate late summer, early fall, we'll start rolling out segments to you. You bet.
Councilor Wolf, please.
Thanks. You mentioned verification, and I have concerns about verification. It seems like in the past we had the planning director and Michelle would go out to do site visits to confirm and oversee the project and make sure that what's being built is consistent with what was approved. And it's my understanding that that's not happening so much lately. Who's in charge of verifying if a project is in fact being implemented consistent with the permit that was issued? How does that work?
Sure, good question. Having more information on what projects are of concern would be super helpful to know who's specifically responsible. But in general, I am taking the lead on ensuring it gets accomplished. And there's different areas. What I'm really doing with the staff and myself right now is focusing in on areas of expertise And that is what we are primarily responsible for, and then the secondary review or input by another person. So for example, if we have a grading permit, then that's an area for me, coming from an engineering and heavy construction background, is easy for me to monitor. And so what I'm instilling in the department and showing through demonstration is, here's what an inspection checklist and schedule looks like. And so I track, for example, when I do go by a project, which is typically twice a week, I do drive-throughs around town, then I'll note that on that checklist. And if there are any concerns or anything of interest that was happening at that time.
So you're the only person who checks on developments and building to see if it's being done consistent with
No,
the plan?
no, I'm not the only one. It depends on which project. So that's why I asked if there was a specific project that,
Yeah, like the
We want-
project at Six Beckers with the grading problem, where they've apparently graded more than they were supposed to and nobody noticed it until now it's too late. But in general, I just wanted to know, is it the staff, the person who submits the staff report? Are they responsible for the oversight if the project is approved? Or how, I think there should be something on the website advising us who's in charge of what. But I
Sure.
think that, anyway, the other question I have
could I
is-
address that, please, for
Oh,
just a
yes,
moment?
please.
So I think that's a good one. It's, I believe we meant 6 El Paso. So in 6 El Paso, a grading permit was issued earlier this year. It was publicly noticed. The original application that was submitted was significantly reduced. And with that, it was reduced such that it was simply to stabilize between the two municipalities because they were not approved to do any major digging. On that property where the pins, survey pins are, that is where it is important to serve as a reference. So there have been some questions recently with the assumption of different reference points on the driveway, that's where we should be looking. And it's actually from the survey pins. So because, again, since I have that heavy construction background, going out and on the site and knowing where that is and being able to walk it is important. And I can assure you with 6 El Paso, because that is one that I'm responsible for, I issued that permit and I monitor it. I go by every Tuesday and Thursday, roughly. Sometimes it's Monday, sometimes it's Friday, but twice a week. They are in compliance with what was ultimately agreed to and the permit was issued. So, and we're happy to answer questions anytime when something like that comes up.
Thank you. And also, do we have any documentation? Oh, I forget to talk right into. Do we have any documentation of the community engagements that you're doing? For example, you mentioned about the fire training facility. I'd like to see the notes of who was there, how many people were there, what were their concerns. How can we get your notes from those meetings?
Great question. I'm happy to share those notes with you. The meeting was held via Zoom and in person, and I learned after the meeting that there was not a recording. So even though several of us had verified during the process that it was not. So I do not have a video recording of that, but I do have significant notes from that meeting. I can share those with you and all of council.
Sure.
Counselor Chandler, please.
So I have a question about particularly commercial development. Is there a process or is it being considered with the zoning rewrite when a commercial developer comes in and has wonderful plans with regard to their property and landscaping plans? Is there a follow-up, say a year after, to go and do a site visit to see if, for example, how the drainage is, or if the landscaping is alive, or is there a follow-up process that happens that where a report is issued and accessible to the community about how that's going? So, because I'm seeing and experiencing some developments where you can come down to the planning department and you can look at the plans that were approved, and then a year later, you're looking at and asking yourself, this is not, what happened? So can you discuss that? And if we don't have anything currently, is there a process for the new code rewrite for addressing that?
Great question. It's definitely an issue that I've encountered since I've come into the city 14 months ago. I can't speak to what was here previously because there was not, as far as I can find, a process to that effect. I, right now, to your point, Councilor Wolf, a moment ago, who's doing what? There's one property in town over on Becker's Lane where there's concern about the landscaping and what's going on. So for example, on Saturday, which is not the first one, but it's one of 3 visits that I've made out to the development to see what has been installed. How does that match up with the plan that was approved? Because that development plan was approved through Planning Commission and City Council. And then I counsel, this one in particular is a great example because then I counsel them, I walk the site with them on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Sometimes, especially in 2020 and 2021, what we've seen is that plants and trees or other materials that were supposed to be available have been in short supply because of supply issues, is my understanding. And I've had that own experience with a redbud tree. I've had difficulty finding what I was looking for where I normally would have. So there's a reasonable opportunity for substitutions, but they have to meet the code, and the code does state certain number of trees, minimum caliper, bushes, that sort of thing. And so with that, for example, for that particular one, that gets my notes, which I go out with the plan itself and a highlighter and a red marker and note all the way around the property what the status is. And so something like that you could always ask for. That'll that'll retain in the property file. And then I haven't completed on this particular one, that's a good example, I haven't completed the report. But once the report is done, sure, absolutely, that could be issued or submitted or released to anyone.
So to segue into that, is this something that you have initiated since you've come on board, since it sounds like it hasn't been done in the past? And is this going to be something that is your personal responsibility, or is this going to be something that's going to be reflected in the code rewrite, that this will be a standard procedure, that there will be follow-up at certain process steps in the development to make sure that the development that's been approved is actually the development that it's happening?
Sure. Again, I'm not sure what the consistency was of what was done previously. I think one of the best ways to be a good leader is to model what you want done and teach how to do it. And so that's part of why I've taken some of these particular items on. And that is my expectation. So I'm in the process of drawing up an SOP for it, and it would become a part of the procedural aspects of our municipal code.
Denise?
Couple things that we're also doing from a transparency perspective. All administrative reviews that are the bigger ones, not, just the tiny ones, are going to be on the weekly reports so that you guys are aware that something was administrative reviewed and approved, and that the other boards and commissions are aware of that. So that's something that I've asked Christine to start immediately. So you should start seeing that on administrative reports so you're aware of administrative reviews. And then you as council, of course, you have the authority to say there are certain things you want in the code, and you want to make sure that there are certain guidelines and certain dates. So I would ask you to think about that as the code update is being done, because those are things for you to really set that directive of a policy of what checks and balances do you want in any of the areas as we update that.
Good, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Christine from other council members? I guess not.
I'll just tag on to that. We're under a great deal of pressure from all avenues, if you will, to enforce or not enforce. And it's really important, to Denise's point, that what comes out in the ultimate final code is what we intend for it to be. Because if we attempt to put restrictions upon residents or business owners that are not in the code, that's government overreach, right? If we don't enforce what's in the code, then we're not doing our job. So to Denise's point, it's important that we get this right, and we're thoughtful and have good conversations. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Okay. I guess there's no further questions there, so Christine, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
we'll be off to the next department.
One of the things, let me just add to this, Christine, maybe because there is some concern about and Christine's the one that is doing it because of her expertise, which is great, but as she goes out on her weekly report, she could put what she's gone out to reviewed, and that way all of you are aware and she's aware of what's happening, so we can add that to the weekly report real easy for transparency.
Okay, thank you. Good. All right.
Good evening. Skylar Beck, Parks and Recreation Director. Been with the city for a little over 2.5 months now, and I've been looking forward to this opportunity to introduce myself and share a little about my vision for the Parks and Recreation Department. A lot of my time has been spent on relationship building, a lot of listening, a lot of learning, observing, trying to understand, how things work here and what has been done previously and all the great work that everyone is doing here. I wanted to start with a quick review of the goals that were established previously for this year. Most of those goals have, stalled or had very little progress due to a variety of factors, some shifting priorities and things like that I'll kind of get into throughout my presentation. Next slide, please. So this is the structure of the new Parks and Recreation Department with a breakdown of each division. So we have Parks Maintenance, the Pool and Fitness Center, and Special Events that all fall under me. I have spent my career in Parks and Recreation, previously working for other cities in Colorado as well as Iowa, and I've held various roles in the Parks and Recreation field, touching on each of these actually. And I'm thrilled to be here with this opportunity, and I have some grand ideas and a great vision for this department, and I intend to be around for a long time to accomplish all that. Next slide, please. So the next couple of slides, I share a little about some of our mid-year highlights and some goals to accomplish looking ahead for the rest of the year. Starting with Parks Maintenance. Of course, this is the busy time of year where we maintain our parks and public spaces, and we have prioritized turf management using the organic land management policy that has been adopted previously by the community. Staff has taken ownership over turf maintenance, and we can better control the need to maintain those areas at a savings to our department of $25,000 due to the savings from a previous contractor that we worked with in the past. We have prioritized the installation of smart clock timers. We were talking about sustainability earlier. Those smart clock timers allow us to manage water costs. They save up to 20% of water while maintaining healthy turf. And then we have also increased our park resources, becoming fully staffed, and allows us to better respond to maintenance issues and be more proactive. Year to date, we have received 257 C-Click Fix work orders, and we have been able to close about 90% of those. And so it's really something that we're able to manage as a staff and make those a priority so we respond to the community requests. Of course, we had the unfortunate incident at the cemetery with vandalism at the end of May. Our staff, I'm pleased that we responded quickly and immediately and dedicated over 100 hours in a couple of days to repair the damage, so much so that you'd hardly know if that even occurred if you were to go up there today. That is something that I'm proud of our staff that we were able to respond very quickly and restore that beloved area. There is a fundraiser in place currently. We have raised over $1,500 in just a few short weeks. That will enable us to repair damaged items such as vases and chipped headstones and things like that. And that should be done within the next couple of weeks. We are also looking to install security cameras so we can prevent something like this from happening again in the future. Something else that we have been working on is the Adopt a Park program. This enables us to increase the volunteerism in the community and really work with the community members who are passionate and will help pick up trash and pull weeds and keep our public spaces clean. We also have renewed the gardener contract for 2021. I meet every week with the gardener, and we walk the parks, we walk the downtown area, and really have eyes and focus on keeping things looking nice for our community. Looking ahead for the rest of 2021, the Hiawatha Gardens landscaping project will be a priority. I'm working on an RFP and should have something in place within the next couple of weeks. We will lean heavily on community stakeholders to ensure everyone is pleased with the design and have that in place hopefully this fall. Tree replacement is also something that weighs heavy on my mind. I want to replace a lot of the dead trees that you see around town, and I'm taking inventory and we'll schedule replacement of trees and really put something in there that will be sustainable over the long term and something that'll stick and be successful there. Streetscape maintenance is another thing. We want to enhance the overall appearance of public spaces, and we'll dedicate staff hours each week to cover various areas around town, broken out by zones. That's something that Public Works and I have been working on together. Next slide, please. That's it for parks. The Pool and Fitness Center, we are fully staffed for the first time since early 2019. We have a full crew there, allows us to expand hours. We conducted a pool shutdown June 1st through the 6th. During that time, we scheduled major equipment replacement in the lap pool, and it was also an opportunity to deep clean and train staff and reorganize storage areas and really kind of take a step back and make sure the pool is ready to open for the busy summer. And this is actually something that's pretty typical in recreation centers. In my experience, there's typically a shutdown once or twice a year to take care of some of these things. We have reopened all amenities, so the kiddie pool, outdoor adult spa, those opened in early June, and then the lap pool reopened on July 3rd. Looking ahead for the rest of the year, we have some capital improvement funds set aside to make ADA improvements in the locker rooms in particular. I'm working with a consultant right now out of Colorado Springs to identify certain areas where we can make those improvements and meet code. And then I wanted to mention the master plan for the facility. As you may know, the facility is deteriorating. It's over 50 years old. Staff is doing all they can to piece things together to stay open to the public, but this really isn't sustainable for much longer. The issues are well known, and we have potentially an opportunity to take a step back and really enhance the facility. It is a community asset. It's something that is open to anybody and everybody, regardless of age or ability or demographic. It's something that, in my short time here, I've gathered that the community takes pride in the facility. We have many, many regular patrons that come every day, including our own swim team, the Torpedoes. We actually have a state champion who, in swimming who came from the Torpedoes program. So it's very competitive, and it's something that we want to preserve in this community. I also, coming from the Parks and Recreation background, I see an opportunity to increase programming. Our residents shouldn't have to go to Colorado Springs for fitness classes or summer day camp or youth sports leagues and other programming within the facility. So it's something that I want to improve over time in this community and really offer that service to our patrons. With the facility itself, my goal is to hire a consultant to really evaluate the facility and conduct public outreach to determine needs. The Parks and Facilities study that is currently ongoing has done a great job of identifying some of the major issues at the facility, but it's looking at the facility as is now. And I want to kind of take a step back and really understand from the community what are the needs of the facility, and sort of start to generate a concept plan and work with the residents and key stakeholders to develop that plan. And once we have that vision established, it'll enable us to identify alternative funding sources, grants, fundraiser, things like that. And that's, maybe a several years project, but it's something that weighs heavy on my mind, and I would like to move on, hopefully sometime this year, and really work on an RFP process to hire a consultant, at least for the vision process. And that'll probably be our first phase, and then we'll kind of move on from there. Next slide, please. The third area under Parks and Recreation is special events. We have been busy facilitating vaccine clinics for the community. We've hosted 3 clinics so far, with another one scheduled later this month. Nearly 100 people have received the vaccine through those clinics. We also have brought back special events this year, working with event promoters. The number of public events will be more than 2020 due to the shutdown, but we will not have as many events as we did in 2019. The Canon Art Project is underway. It was mentioned previously. It is actually nearing completion. And then looking ahead for the rest of 2021, we want to work on the park use policy. That is one of the big rocks that came out of council a couple months ago. Our goal is to strike that balance of hosting special events while keeping parks open and available to residents. We want to preserve that accessibility and availability to our residents while also balancing the needs of the park. So we are actually collaborating with other cities, such as Boulder and some other ones through the Colorado Parks and Recreation Association, to learn policies and benchmark against other communities. We aim to set aside rest periods for the park and turf recovery after a special event. And this will also be something that will be under review by PARAB in the coming months. And then to coincide with the park use policy, we are looking to streamline the special events application. Currently there's a couple different applications you fill out for various reasons. We're trying to consolidate all that and make it more streamlined and in one place. And this will also contain some of the procedures and parameters that come out of the park use policy. Next slide. Okay, and lastly, some other priorities within the Parks and Recreation Department. Working with PARAB, we are conducting an RFP process for the Wheeler Park Labyrinth design. Proposals are due by July 15th, and we have a selection process in place, and the hope is to complete that project also within the next couple of months. We also have a sustainability and resiliency consultant in place with a number of goals that, incremental goals that we are looking to accomplish each month. One of those goals is to train city staff and make sure we're all speaking the same language when it comes to sustainability and resiliency. We are starting to look at a tree trimming policy, benchmark against other communities, and understand tree preservation standards, pruning procedures, removal, plantings, things like that. This is an opportunity to capture community desires to maintain trees and maintain the healthy canopy that is already in place here. We also work regularly with the Climate Action Work Group. We're taking a step back and trying to understand what the needs and desires are from that group and how it can be best suited to fill that need within the community. We're benchmarking against other communities there as well, looking at how other communities manage advisory groups or nonprofits, whatever that may look like in other communities. I believe the Climate Action Work Group can accomplish great things through ordinances and understanding some of the workloads and apply sustainability practices to that. but we need to set the vision and tangible goals first. Then the other thing that we're looking at is Tree City USA. That is a great achievement of this community that doesn't happen to every city. It is a priority to maintain that designation, so the consultant will evaluate the criteria and incorporate that into the tree trimming policy. And then it is a goal to bring a new resolution to council later this year with sustainability initiatives and incremental goals that are realistic and things that we can accomplish to take critical steps to improve the sustainability practices within our staff. Then the last thing I'll mention is the Pollinators Group, MOU. We have been working with that group over the past couple of weeks with successful plantings at Mansions Park and Shriver Park during Pollinator Week. We hope to replicate that success in other areas of the city to accommodate more pollinator-friendly garden beds and make some of those improvements that would be low maintenance and areas where it makes sense for us. A formal MOU with the Butterfly Pavilion and Manitou Pollinators hopefully will come later this fall. Overall, I believe we're headed in the right direction at the mid-year point. There have been some unanticipated challenges we are working through. I believe COVID-19 pandemic has shed an even bigger light on the essential role of parks and recreation services. In response to the pandemic, parks and recreation professionals across the country really mobilized swiftly to keep parks and trails and facilities open to support physical and mental health. Staff was asked to alter schedules and prioritize maintenance tasks with even more limited resources, resulting in an increase in deferred maintenance. The effects of COVID-19 will be felt for many years to come, but we are working to prioritize the assets that we do have and that mean a lot to this community and ensure that they are available now and for many generations to come. So thank you for your time.
Council, do you have questions or comments for Skylar? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. First, Scholar, I just want to say that it's wonderful to have you on board. I've always considered parks and our open spaces to be a gem of our community. So having Parks Department broken out as a separate department really, I think, shows the city also values our parks and open spaces. So it's good to have you. I do have a couple of concerns that I just want to voice to you. And I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just asking you to kind of keep an eye out and maybe get back with me someday on it. But the first is we currently are using potable water on parks. And we previously were not able to do that. And Lynn and Chris had kind of convinced me that it was more cost effective to use potable water because the pump in the creek always got clogged up. But I just hope that in the very near future there will be some technology that will prevent that. And I just think it's so wasteful when most of our parks are on creeks to use potable water on them. And my second question, not to be answered tonight, but just to keep an eye out, is the question of if we should charge ourselves, if the city should charge itself for the water that we use on parks if we are going to use potable water. So those are my only comments. Thank you.
Okay, I will just respond briefly on what I know. As I understand it, the irrigation parts and pieces to funnel water from the creek to our parks got to be too expensive to replace and difficult. And if COVID has taught us anything, the supply chains have been disrupted, and I think it would be difficult to count on some of those parts and pieces coming in a timely fashion, but it's certainly something I'll look into. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? Denise?
I do want to mention that council will be trained on sustainability. So they'll be coming in, and Conrad will be doing about an hour training on what sustainability really is, or so that we're all speaking the same language. And that's on August 3rd. He'll be coming and doing a training with council on sustainability at that time. And we are bringing Conrad, he's being part of the zoning. I know he's met with Christine for the updates to really make sure that sustainability is part of that zoning update also.
Okay, anyone else? I guess just in passing, I've had a number of comments from citizens who invariably comment on the number of weeds and so forth that are growing up. You know, I realize it's a challenge for all of us, whether we're homeowners or the city and whatnot. Anything we can do to, you know, set a good example for ourselves, I think that encourages the citizens. That'd be a step forward for us if we can work some of that, a little more of that into the work schedule. That'd be great.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Oh, may I make a comment?
Julie?
Thank you. And I also just wanted to comment that over the years, there have also been, a fair amount of citizen concerns about how the parks get so trashed out by the festivals we have. And what's the point of having these festivals? Does it really bring more money into the city? I noticed you mentioned something about $3,000 or something, which we could easily lose $3,000 just by the businesses getting less business that day because everyone's in the park shopping in the park instead of shopping at the businesses. So I just would like some analysis at some point. I don't mean to be directing staff, but since Nancy went for it, I thought I would go for it too. If we could have some information from you someday when it's convenient to see what real benefit does the city, if any, get from some of these festivals, and does it make sense to drag more cars and more people into town, especially during the busiest time of our year, because most of these festivals happen to be in the summer. If we're already so full and busting at the seams anyway with, bumper-to-bumper traffic, what is the point? Also, people are concerned not just because of the financial waste in doing that, but the impact on the parks. It just takes so long. I mean, there was one summer where the parks were all corded off for weeks, just so that the grass could try to regrow. So just to see, at some point, I think we need to figure out what's a reasonable balance and what makes sense. Thanks.
Great.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that real quick, that is going to be a critical piece in the park use policy. We're hoping to do a little bit of that analysis, and that'll help find that balance, I believe. Having special events every single weekend is extremely tough on the parks, and that's something, this policy, having that in place will help us say no to event promoters and really help protect some rest periods for the parks and keep it open to the residents. Thanks.
Councilor Chandler?
First of all, welcome aboard. It's just a thrill to have you. And just to segue into what Councilor Wolf was saying, with my passion about the Climate Action Work Group, we've been singing the song of sustainability for a number of years, and I think it all comes down to the sustainability piece. And I love to see you working with the Climate Action Work Group and the pollinators because it's all, all of the puzzle pieces fit together. But the sustainability piece isn't just environmental sustainability, it's economic sustainability. And I do really like the idea of the cost-benefit analysis of this is the, when we talk about what's the real cost of a gallon of gas, it's kind of like what's the real cost of using our parks and those kinds of things. It will be great to see what is the cost-benefit sustainability analysis and what can we do as a city to encourage economic sustainability while really respecting the needs and desires of our residents. And by residents, I don't mean just two-leggeds, I mean our pollinators and our four-leggeds and all of the wildlife that inhabit this place that make it such a great place to visit. But basically, welcome aboard, and I'm just really thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, Skylar, I'll extend congratulations. Glad to have you aboard. I think in your position with Parks and Rec, you're getting to see a lot of the different flavors that are Manitou, and a lot of the interesting people. So carry on.
I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, Denise?
Mayor, I want to ask council, would it be okay if those that have presented that they go ahead and be let go for the evening because they work long hours, unless if you have additional questions. I just want to make sure, if you think they need to stay till the end, that's great, but if not, if we could go ahead and let them go.
I was also going to suggest that we maybe take a 10-minute break. So if council has no objections, we could let those who've presented go.
Go home and enjoy your
Okay.
families.
All right, great. So let's take a 10-minute break, come back about 7:30. And those of you who presented, thank you. Have a nice evening. We'll see you later. Okay, if we could kind of gather up and get started again, please. Okay, the next department to report is Communications and the Public Information Officer. So Alex, you've got the floor.
Hello, everyone. My name's Alex Treffry. I'm the Public Information Officer. Just real quickly, I'll give some high-level accomplishments and some data for communications. So first of all, as you all know, City Council approved the media relations policies, which is great because it gives a written document on the policies and procedures for handling media and just distributing information in general. Also, some data. We have, as of May, I believe, 5,619 Facebook likes. So obviously more than our population, which is fabulous. We've reached 177,000 people this year, as well as had 86,000 visits to our website since January. The average visit duration is about 2 minutes and 34 seconds, which is right on par where you want to be. You don't want it to be too short to where they get frustrated and leave, and you don't want them to be there too long looking for info. Same thing with the clicks per visit. 3.1, you want about in between 3 and 4 because you don't want them clicking around trying to figure out where to go. And you also don't want them clicking once and then giving up. Also, that equates to 175,000 page views on our website. Also, as everyone knows, since you get my constant emails, we've released 65 press releases thus far this year, and just recently started meeting regionally with communication professionals around the region, including Colorado Springs, Monument, Woodland Park, Fountain, in El Paso County. And that is all for my slides. So does anyone have any questions?
Questions for Alex? Anyone? No questions for Alex? Okay, boy, you got off easy. We'll give you harder ones next time.
All right, thank you.
But thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, we'll hear from the police.
Can I just mention, Chief Otto is on vacation, and so Sergeant Ballard is doing the presentation tonight.
Great, thank you.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
So we're, oh, okay.
Yeah, Alex, you need to be about 3 or 4, no more than 3 or 4 inches from the mic, probably even closer.
Just kiss it.
Just kiss it, yeah.
Fair enough. So I'm just going to go through this quickly here. Our police department goals are to complete 100% of the 21 recommendations made in 2019. So far, we've made significant progress on the 21 goals. On the first goal, it's in progress. We're doing a review of policy and trying to get that tailored to fit MSPD better. Recommendation number 2 is to develop SOPs. We're currently at over 30 of those. I turned in another one this week, so we're diligently working on that to get that completed. Human resources and support for the police department. We've been working with Kelly Padilla and HR on that, and that's completed. As far as the physical office space for the police department, we're looking into different options for that, and that's in progress as the developments to this facility goes. The camera system within the police department has been replaced, and that project's complete. The vehicle and equipment replacement policy, our goal is to add a new vehicle, 1 every odd year and 2 every even year. We got the new truck that's in service now, and we have a Tahoe that's on order that should be coming to us later this year. There's been an SOP written for the hiring process on recommendation 7. and we're complying with that currently. The pay ranges for the chief and the top range salary, the chief and HR are working together to get that accomplished, and that's in progress. Recommendation 9 is prioritizing efforts to maintain staffing levels and evaluate deployment schedules. Currently, we're doing really well on staffing. The only thing we're lacking is the decision on the chief, and then that way we can fill the detective slot once that's been decided in, I think, September, when you guys are getting to that. Oh, you're fine. The recommendation number 10 is to add a full-time employee as an evidence and property custodian. We've hired a part-time employee to assist with that, and we're doing quarterly audits with that to make sure that our evidence room stays in compliance. Recommendation was 11 was to utilize sergeants as field training officers. I can personally attest that we've been doing that. Recommendation number 12 is to provide leadership and for supervisors or newly promoted supervisors. That's going to be a constant thing that we're constantly doing. We have a wealth of experience over there with Bill and Sergeant Savine, who've been supervisors for a long time, so we can do some in-house training as well as external training for that. The recommendation 14, excuse me, I think I skipped one. Recommendation 13, establish a mid-level command position. The oral boards for commander position are hopefully to be done by the end of July. Recommendation 14, a formal and consistent process for promotion and transfer opportunities. The SOP for that has been written. I don't think there's been any transfers to date so far, but once that comes up, that will be implemented. For number 15, it's clearly defined policing philosophy and utilize this to mentor employees with that philosophy. We're currently working to get community meetings scheduled. I believe we do have a couple scheduled, or we have them scheduled with the communities. And we also want to include Coffee with a Cop and add more foot patrols downtown to increase our, I guess, accessibility to the public. The city emergency manager responsibility has been designated to the fire department. Chief Forsett has taken that over for us. Recommendation 17, restructure the internal affairs process and case filing storage. That has been completed with the addition of Blue Team and IA Pro. Recommendation 18, all seized and confiscated firearms should be submitted for entry with NIBINS, which is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Networks. That's complete. All firearms that come into our evidence facility are being taken down to CBI and submitted for NIBINS testing. Recommendation 19 is implement a process for resolution of employee conflict and dissension. That's completed. We're working with HR to successfully take care of any issues that arise. Recommendation 20 is to establish and maintain relevant partnerships and collaborate with other city departments, businesses, and other law enforcement. We're constantly trying to build relationships with other people to help us do our jobs better. And we're always utilizing the resources that we can to help people if we have the opportunity. And the last recommendation is establish strategies for direct and improved communication techniques within MSPD in the community. That's in progress with the community meetings and the things that we have coming up. Communication is always a difficult one to nail down, and we'll continue to work on it. So as far as the staffing goes, we're 100% or as much as we can be now with the detective's position pending. And we're going to try to definitely push those community meetings to get us out there and get us more contact with the public and make us more accessible. If I could have the next slide, please. So as far as fully staffed as we can be, this is the first time since 2015 that we've been close to this point. So we're appreciating that right now, and we're happy to have all the help around. We've been making connections with the other agencies and utilizing those resources. With the Beacon unit, the behavioral health unit, we've been utilizing them. The crisis negotiation unit with El Paso County, the homeless outreach team, the HOT team with Colorado Springs Police Department, the Pikes Peak cleanup crew, and the collaborating with neighboring agencies as far as El Paso County and CSPD as criminal issues arise. We're also doing the evidence audit quarterly to ensure that the evidence facility is up to date. We're working on the SOPs. We ordered 3 new radios. I think they shipped yesterday. So we'll be getting those into service as soon as they arrive. And we've cleaned up 3 transient camps in June and more than 4,000 calls. I believe that's year to date. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Comments, questions from council? Denise, do you have, looks like you.
Yeah, just a couple of things. He mentioned about the salary for the police chief, and that I don't think is correct. What we're doing is looking at the salary for all the police officers. Several years ago, you guys approved a STEP program, and we're revisiting that to make sure that it's in line with others. So that's one of the things that the HR department is doing at this point. So it's not for the police chief, it's for all the officers at this time.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Comments? Mr. Bremner?
Yeah, I just have a comment. It's not really a question regarding the.
Can you speak a little closer to the microphone, please? Thanks.
Regarding the cleanups around Manitou Springs, I really commend what happened up there, especially in the Black Canyon open space. Gary Johnson went out there on a Saturday, and he, with the vehicle, I think either his personal vehicle or our vehicle, he took out 2 truckloads of trash. And that, I believe, is significantly more than 3 camps. It was, I was up there with Trevor Becker, who is the main person with the Pikes Peak cleanup crew, and I showed him all those camps. It's a lot of trash. It was a lot of trash. And they hiked back in there as far as, nearly a mile to clean out those camps. And so I just want to commend the Gary Johnson, especially the police department, for doing that, and continue the good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve. Natalie?
I just wanted to confirm that you don't have dates for the community meetings yet, or are they scheduled?
I am, unfortunately, do not. I will get those to you later. I believe we do have them scheduled. I just didn't have the dates, and I apologize for that.
Thank you.
We do have the dates set, so we'll just make sure it's part of the weekly report. I don't know them off the top of my head, but we have sent them, I think, out to you earlier, if I remember correctly, but we'll make sure that we get that in our weekly report.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. I guess we'll save some hard questions for you for another night, Sergeant.
You can save those for Bill. Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot. I believe finance is next. Becca?
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Davis, the Finance Director. Good evening. I am Rebecca Davis, the Finance Director. As the city's financial director, my main goal is to ensure the city is sound financially, which is accomplished by accurate payroll, ensuring the city's financial policies are followed, and having the department heads report on quarterly variances under their purview. For this year, we had several goals. The first was a request for proposals for banking services, and that task has been accomplished. We now have the department scan all of the new records so that we're not contributing to storage issues. We evaluated whether to purchase or lease city vehicles and decided on a lease purchase, and City Council approved this by a lease ordinance earlier this year. And finally, to complete the audit and present it to City Council by July 31st, and it is on the July 20th agenda. There's been a couple of added projects. One is, everybody should be very familiar with, is the American Rescue Plan Act. And our Public Works Director already presented to you about what city staff is recommended to council to spend the money on, and we did receive approval from you for that. And also, I'll be presenting a long-term financial sustainability presentation in August. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Council, questions? I guess I would, I've got one, and it's, I think kind of maybe somewhat vague, but it looks to me like we're having a bumper year in terms of tourism, and I would expect our sales tax collections to be pretty good. So maybe you could speak to that, Becca.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. You'll see on the mid-year budget amendment that I have substantially increased the forecast for sales tax for the general fund. I want to say it's, well, the number is now going to be 7,900,000, which is a substantial increase over the original budget estimate, which was 6,000,005.
That's good news. That's you can say that as many times as you want here. I think we'll all be glad to hear that.
7,900,000.
Great.
Actually, I didn't evolve this in a vacuum. We had a meeting with Neil Minch and discussed it, and he is in agreement that this would be an appropriate forecast for the city.
Great. That should make budget season a little more interesting, helpful. Great. Denise.
I want to add a couple of things that Becca has put in place this year for checks and balances is each department head has to report to her quarterly of variances, and she's going through that to make sure that we are staying on budget and any additional funds. The other thing is all grant applications and match has to go through Becca before it can go anywhere else to make sure that we can meet those needs from a financial perspective. And what other things do we have in place for you to really do our checks and balances? There's one other, but I can't remember it right now. Oh, and then she's sending you a monthly update of where we are with the budget so that you receive that quarterly or monthly now. And so there's more checks and balances than what's ever been in place for our budget at this point. Lots of things have to be in place and has to go through Becca. Any approvals for new positions, or not new, but for even replacement, has to go through Becca to make sure that it's in the budget so that there's no misunderstanding from our financial perspective.
Good. I think that helps clarify things. Anything else for Becca? Okay, hearing none. Becca, thank you very much. Have a nice evening. And next we'll hear from Fire Chief John Forsett. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, sir. I'm John Forsett, Fire Chief. Great thing about being with the fire department is I could talk about goals and accomplishments for hours. But what we focus on tonight, I really just wanted to talk about those things that I spoke with you folks about when we started the year 21. Our goals for 21 included continuing to build on our training environment and then the station apron out front. I'd kind of be remiss to stand out front here and talk about either of these two goals without saying that this was more me a visionary, and I couldn't be doing this without planning department. Christine and Dole both have huge parts in this, as well as the Public Works Department, Jeff Jones. As far as our training environment goes up there at the water treatment plant, a lot of work has been done up there. Lots and lots of work been up there. Site surveys, the geotechnical studies, zoning, which was very difficult to find out that it was accurate. Foundation design, site plans, building design, lots of all that's been going on. And most of that credit obviously goes to our planning department, who's done great work there. as far as replacing the driveway out front of the fire station. You've seen that. I mean, it's terrible and it's faltering. We have a contractor selected for that. The contractor is going to begin work on the 26th, if I'm correct. We'll have a pre-construction meeting on the 22nd. The great thing about this, though, is we're also going to be managing replacement, not only of in front of the fire station, but also taking care of the drainage and replacement of the surface in front of the police department as well. So yeah, we'll have a good drainage pan going through there and resolving some of the issues we have up front for both buildings. Next slide. I wanted to just briefly talk a little bit about the personnel at the fire department. We're made up of two different organizations, realistically. It's two organizational structures. There's the paid structure and there's the volunteer structure. The paid structure is 6 folks that you all are very well aware of, and then we have 41 volunteers. In that 41 volunteer number of folks, we have officers, so there's lots of decision makers and a chain of command throughout our structure. And I just wanted to mention that. All great folks, very dedicated to what we do. Next slide. Some of our statistics, not to get into these in detail, I teased Skylar on his way out. Skylar had talked about how on his ClickFix engagements with the community, they have a 90% response to the community's needs. I just wanted to let him know that we have 100% over at the fire department every time the community calls. So I teased him a little bit about that. Our calls kind of remain the same. We're always roughly around 1,100 every year. They go up and down. The interesting things about our call makeup is structure fires go down, but maybe homeless activities go up. It's odd how they stay the same as far as average totals, but the actual makeup of the type of calls does change quite greatly over the years. I think an important note is the average response time for us is 5 minutes and 21 seconds. Those are 2 emergent calls that we have, and that's currently year to date for this year. I always want to point out that from the time we receive an alarm next door to the time that the folks are on the truck and already en route is 1 minute and 34 seconds on average. That's well within the 2 minutes required by NFPA. Next slide. So I always talk about training. I don't think there's anything more important that we do that we can be doing for our folks in our community, and that's training, plain and simple. We do a lot of fire training, we do a lot of medical training, and we're always building on those skills. So that's important for me to point out. Over the last year, especially with COVID, we've had lots of COVID-specific training. We just completed an emergency medical technician class, a basic class for folks. Great thing about that class is that that's conducted by our personnel, and we reach out to other organizations, mostly to our west. We've had folks come to our class from as far away as 4 Mile and Lake George that attended this class. So they tell me they miss coming down here 3 days a week. We do our paramedic refresher, our CPR. Of course, we're always developing our officers and our drivers. Wildlands is an extremely important training for us. As you well know, we've been very lucky getting the moisture that we've gotten and the nice climate. Somebody knock on wood quickly for me, please. That will change, but it's going well. I think one of the most exciting things I wanted to talk about with training, and it's a new program, and it's going to be one of our great accomplishments, is completing the makeup of a tactical emergency medical team, TIMS. That team is a team that will actually work with the PD, go in during hostile situations with protective gear on, like an active shooter in our schools, and be able to work with the police under fire to bring out patients or treat patients and police officers while engaged in an active environment. So that's exciting for us. Next slide. Like I say, our accomplishments, I could talk forever on that, but some things that are really good for us this year, I just wanted to point out. After the incline fire, I was a little disappointed that we weren't able to apply some needed equipment and tactics to that fire, and it was a small fire. That was just a small test of things to come and historic events. But what we found on that is we could have gotten water to it a whole lot sooner, but for us to get water on a fire like that, you need to be able to transport it, and we had to collect equipment from several different agencies from around the region to be able to do that and bring water out of Ruxton Creek up Bar Trail to that fire. With the assistance of Denise and helping us utilize dollars that we earn when we go on deployments for other communities throughout the United States. We took those dollars and using a trailer that we had already had, the fire department already had, just sitting up at Public Works, we created a trailer that now has lots of wildland equipment in it, like hand tools, but most importantly, it has 3,000 feet of hose in two 1,500-foot packages that will allow us to pump from a water source like a stream or a reservoir into, they're called pumpkins, they're tanks. And from those tanks, again, carry the water to another tank and then carry it out to the fire. This was real important to me, not only for what we see around here locally, because we have apparatus, which is wonderful to have the apparatus, but what we can't do is get behind the people's homes. All these hillsides have no access for us. So we have to create our own access and find ways to mitigate those situations. So that allows us to do that. But more importantly for me, it was looking at Manitou Reservoir. That's become a huge priority. The fact that that's a single water source for us. So this will give us opportunity that if we do have something up there that we can engage in, assuming that the conditions allow us to engage, we can actually utilize water from the reservoir and go to different areas around there and be able to apply water as well to mop those fires up when we can. So that was really huge. The next one, as you know, we've always had 4 motorcycles that we utilize to access our trail systems around the city. And the unfortunate thing about utilizing motorcycles is my pool of EMTs aren't all qualified or capable of riding a motorcycle, especially on trails. It's not like a street bike. It's a very difficult thing to do. So we traded in 2 of those motorcycles, and we are replacing them with e-bikes, and they're e-mountain bikes. Very, very efficient, very, very capable of and tested on the Bar Trail, on the bailout trails, on Inman Trail, and so forth. And that really increases the pool of EMTs that we can get medical assistance to folks in a very quick manner. So that's exciting. And then, of course, you've already heard, but we were the EMS Agency of the Year, which is something still to brag about. So that's where we're at with that. I don't think there's any other slides. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for the chief? Julie?
I just have a comment. I just have a comment that what I've heard over the years and even more recently is that when the fire department goes out to different residents' homes for medical emergencies, that they are just so fabulous and so compassionate and supportive. And I just appreciate that. You know, it's one thing to do a good job, but it's another thing to do it with compassion, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's important for us. I think, and it doesn't matter where you're at in the community. We like to say that we treat everybody like their family. Doesn't matter who they are. And to add on that, if I can, some of our accomplishments with that is we're working on building a community medicine program, which will help us engage folks who just come out of a hospital to ensure that they manage their care properly and don't end up back in a hospital. And also during COVID, we started a telehealth program in conjunction with UPass, UC Health. So when needed and when folks want to engage in that and don't want to go to the hospital, we do offer telehealth now where we use our iPad from our truck and we engage a doctor up there at UC Health in UPass. So lots of good things always going on in medicine for us.
Great. Wonderful answers there, John.
Thank you.
Super. Other comments or questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, that is exciting news, thank you. I always love hearing stuff like that. My question, though, is on response times. And I was wondering if I'm assuming your data does not incorporate the El Paso County dispatch time. Do you have a way to capture that as well?
They capture that. If you're talking from time of hello to toning us out, then that's something that they would capture. We can't get that, though. We get that all the time. That's not a problem to get, if that's what you're referring to. Time of hello to,
Right,
yeah, I can get that for you.
okay. As you are well aware, the community is always concerned about the El Paso County Dispatch Center and how that compares.
Yeah.
So I think that would be interesting to.
Yeah.
take a look
I'll
at.
give you a little antidote, if I can. I think they do a really good job. I really think they do a fantastic job. A long, long time ago, when we were looking at changing from our current VHF systems, and the entire region was changing from their current radio systems to being on the 800 megahertz system, communities looked at what it would look like for everybody to consolidate dispatch centers. And back then, I was a proponent of consolidation, simply because it really doesn't quite matter to me who's giving me the information. You could be in a closet in Minnesota, so long as I get it in a timely and accurate manner. That's what's important. So, yeah, I'll get that for you. Thank you.
Mr. Bremner?
Yeah, I just have a comment on the El Paso County dispatch system. I'm not a fan of it, mainly because when you call it up, they give you like 7 different options, but none of them really apply to what you want. You want to talk to somebody. You want somebody to come help you with the fire or whatever the situation is. So you get all these different menu options you got to listen to. And then finally, it says, okay, if you don't want one of those options, which none of them really apply to what I ever want, then finally you get to talk to an operator. So
Is that when you call 911? Or is that when you're calling their business line?
that's when for instance, trying to call the police department.
Okay. I understand that. And I understand why they would have a calling tree for that purpose, but I would be very concerned if that's what you're getting when you call 911.
I haven't called 911 recently. I have called the police department. I just call their number,
Sure.
and that's what happens. I have another comment as well regarding the new training facility. And I know that there's been some pushback from the neighborhood about, the traffic on Minnehaha, for instance, that's going to ensue when that training facility is put in place. And I'd just like to say that don't take it personally to the fire department. I think everybody is very appreciative of the fire department and what you do. I think that some people are concerned about the traffic that might happen once the training facility is put in place. I think the training facility is absolutely necessary. It's a good place to have it, but I think that once it is in place, that we need to have some kind of way of slowing down the traffic or something so that the people that live there are not impacted. That's all.
Sir, I'll do everything to make sure that works.
Oh, may I just
Oh, sure. Yeah,
ask?
Julie, go ahead.
I don't, picking up on what you mentioned, sir, what you mentioned before is about when you call 911. It would be worth, if you would, to do an experiment and see if you can call 911 and see what happens. Because there's not a different 911 for the police than there is for fire. It's all just 911, right? Like,
That's
I haven't
true.
called 911 for
That's true.
fire.
We actually live in interesting circumstances. I'm the MSAG manager for the city of Colorado Springs, which means I manage even cell towers of who they should be directed to. But the interesting thing about Manitou Springs is we have a tower up here on the hill, which works really good to go to county, but a lot of times you may hit the tower at 31st and Pikes Peak up on the church there, which would go to Colorado Springs, and then you're transferred over. So there's a lot of detail to what happens when you make a 911 call. And as far as experimentation, it might be difficult, but as far as gaining data, I think we can do that fairly effectively.
'Cause my experience calling 911 is much like how Steve described, where I thought to myself, thank God it's not a life and death thing, because by the time I get through the damn choose number 1 for this and number 3 for that, and you're like, oh my God.
I will investigate that. If there should be no calling tree on 911.
And then being put on hold. You get put on hold too.
Yeah.
They're like, hold.
Okay.
You're like, really?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
it doesn't, I'm not sure, maybe.
And that holds true with both calm centers, Colorado Springs and El Paso County. Sometimes there is just a call volume that the system can't manage. But I will look at that.
Yeah, my
I
somewhat limited-
especially want to investigate the calling tree.
Yeah, because my limited experience, somewhat limited, not super limited, is that you don't want to call 911 if you have an emergency, because it'll take too long. So I hope that's no longer true, but I think it would be worth looking into, because my experiences were much like what Steve described, which was sort of terrifying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Counselor Chandler?
Chief Orsett, I have some questions regarding the community process regarding the potential fire tower. I was one of those people that zoomed in the evening of the community engagement meeting and couldn't hear, and then found out there was no transcript. I know there were quite a few people in attendance, and it's my understanding that 79 or 80 residents signed a petition. My question to you is, it's my understanding there will be another community engagement meeting. Do you know when that will occur? And if that will be also a hybrid meeting, an in-person and Zoom meeting?
I see lots of movement to my right, so.
Okay, so perhaps that's a better question for you, Denise. I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Thanks. As I mentioned in a previous council meeting, there was some misunderstanding about that meeting, and it was unfortunate. We did a last minute trying to make it a hybrid, which did not work well. And the perception was that we were trying to, not be transparent. So both Christine and John and I are going to take a step back. I went on vacation, so I waited till after we get back. And we're going to look at how we move forward and how we bring this to council, because we do need to bring this to council for final approval to move forward. So I don't have answers for you right now, but I will within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Will there be another community engagement meeting prior to it coming to council?
We can look at that, and it will be a different type of engagement meeting than the last one. The last one was, it was a challenging engagement meeting, and so we'll have to look at the format and how to get input. I will say at the last community engagement meeting, there were many issues that were addressed, and we've addressed some of those with speeding. In fact, I got a thank you card today or yesterday from a resident that said thank you, but we addressed some of those. We've gone up and fixed some potholes, and we've done some of the issues that they were addressing and that they had concerns about. But yes, we will have another one. Just the format, I'm not sure yet.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Chief Forsett? Guess not. Chief, thank you very much. Pass our thanks on to your crew, okay? To your entire team. Thank you. Super. See, I believe next we have Transportation Mobility, the master plan. Roy, I believe that's you.
Roy's going to be presenting this, and parking. Kevin is out, so he's going to be presenting all of it. He wants to sit here, but I think he should sit there. Don't you guys agree?
Roy, sit wherever you're comfortable.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. So first, I'm going to go over the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan. As you know, some of the completed items already, I'll quickly go over them, but we did make Ruxton a residential parking permits only, which I believe has helped a lot in some of the traffic going up Ruxton. Free incline reservation system has been largely successful. We have reduced the number of incliners by half, which has really helped this year with our parking challenges with the MAPS project and even Hiawatha losing about a third of its parking lot. It's been really challenging there, so this has been helpful, especially over the July 4th weekend, which has typically been the highest user rate for the incline in the past. The fees increase. Some preliminary results from the T2 data have showed that some of the turnover has increased, which is our goal. But we may need to consider some increased rates to, again, it's prime parking, so we have to consider that as we go towards the center of town. We did add paid parking areas, which included Hiawatha and all the way to Mayfair. Shuttle stop at the COG largely is working, as it's the Iron Springs Chateau area is a smoother transition with cars. They no longer back up there. But we are having some challenges of some of the vehicles for the COG going up there, and people that are still lost in that area. So we still are working on how we best can keep that smooth and moving along. The COG in online reservations, I'm actually looking into that to see the messaging. I'm not sure that everyone's getting the proper message on where to park, or maybe even wrong messaging. So currently working on that. We have improved the directional signage on Ruxton recently, as last week. We noticed a turning problem there at Hydro and the end of Ruxton. The gentleman who lives on the corner came out and we talked about signage, and so we were on the same page that we need to let people know that they can turn at Bar Lot versus trying to turn in that little section. We put that up, and so far we see a lot more of the cars going up Bar Lot and turning around and not trying to turn in that little area. So it's been helpful. We're still looking at a few other signs to help people understand if you go past a certain point, it's really only for the COG, residents, or the Bar Lot. So we'll continue to look at that. Of course, we did the shuttle route change, which has been challenged again with maps for that Serpentine roundabout. It's also been challenging, as you probably have seen, the lines at Hiawatha. Again, a lot of that seems to be or could be COG use, so we're working on that as well. The crosswalks around Memorial have been striped, and we actually got a lot of compliments. It's visible and safer for pedestrians at this point, so we are happy with the results on that. Of course, we have the safety flag implementation that's done, and we found a good source of flags that we can replace them. So currently, I think the flags are out there and staying currently in place. We have a parking hotline and kiosk stickers that also mention on those kiosks that this is a non-incline parking area, and that's helped a lot on Lower Ruxton. So that's been a positive thing that we just completed as well. Ongoing is always going to be crosswalk safety and pedestrian safety. We'll continue to look at that, as well as mobility as a whole, including bicyclists, and that's part of what we're looking at El Paso. Rear diagonal parking has been approved by CDOT. We are moving ahead at getting final paperwork submitted, and then we will start that project and get some more spaces just the east of City Hall. Four-way stop will be more challenging, but the traffic engineer from Colorado Springs, they did a study for me and found that it is a good location for a four-way stop. And now we're going to go talk to CDOT and see if they can approve that, which will help in that area again to get the shuttle off of El Paso and back on Manitou. El Paso bike and ped improvements and mile per hour indicators painted on the road. This, we're working trying to get this planned for the end of the month, weather permitting, as always with striping. But again, we want to narrow the streets and increase the bike ped lanes and put the mile per hour indicators on the road as a pilot to see if it helps with those that are traveling. It's been so far some good studies that it's been a positive way to get people to slow down. Diagonal parking, striping around Memorial, we're going to actually hold off until fall. It's just too busy right now. We cannot take any more parking spaces away to stripe, so we're going to manage that area the best we can, and then in the fall, we're going to restripe the diagonal parking around Memorial at about 33 degrees. Right now, it's 45-degree angle, which sticks too far out in the road and causes a lot of problems and congestion. Wayfinding signs, that the design that was approved in 2019 have been ordered. We'll be putting those wayfinding signs at Hiawatha to give people direction on how to get into town, as well around town, and at the other lots, so people know where to go. Parking logics, we are continuing to work on that. RMS Signs is coming out with me tomorrow to look at the Hiawatha one, which is a higher sign. We're going to need their help for installation. We are starting to get some data, even without all the signs posted, because of the in-ground sensors. And some of the data is looking accurate, so we're excited that we are getting that, because that's a big part of the system as well. Park mobile reservations, that's in discussions at this point, and we're still reviewing that for possible bar as a pilot program. And so we'll continue working on that. I did talk to a parking specialist recently that Denise happened to meet at one of the seminars she went to. He loves reservations in certain areas, so we're going to discuss on doing the test run and getting his advice on that, as well as some other things about parking. We are, with the code rewrite, going to talk about parking minimums and maximums. There's a real push in most cities now to go to parking maximums. They may still hold on to minimums, but really, if you want to control parking in the city, you need to make sure that you don't try to create more and more parking spaces. You're going to then increase more cars, and that's proven fact. So we have to be careful on what we are asking in the city to have, more cars or more people. Parking benefit districts, that's something that I really think could be a positive in neighborhoods that can't afford it, where they allow certain maybe employee parking, and maybe they get a benefit from that, to where some money can be diverted to sidewalks in that community, in that neighborhood. So that's something that's been really growing as well in communities, to find more spaces. And we do have a lot of parking in Manitou. It's just how do we use them? And it would be up to the neighborhood as well on if they want to join that program. So that's something we're still looking at. Resident pass cards, that one we're going to be bringing back to the Transportation Parking Board to offer residents something. They do get, everyone gets 30 minutes free parking, but I think it would be important that we offer residents either a certain amount of hours every year of free parking, or even free parking, but for within the limits. So we're looking at possibly a pass card where they get a certain amount of hours per year, and then from there they can maybe purchase extra hours if they need them to park on the street. But we have to take care of the residents as well as trying to live here and maybe use the shops around town, et cetera. Progressive paid parking price schedule is something we're looking at, to where we establish a resolution that has a built-in chart based on occupancy of on-street parking, that rates either automatically go up or go down. So we don't have to take it to council. Council approves it, and then we follow the percentages of occupancy at like 90%. That way, maybe every 6 months we reevaluate, and then we make those adjustments based on the need and in downtown and going out. So that's been a really effective way to go ahead and make adjustments, and it's an automatic system. So we use data. So that's something we'll be presenting soon to see if council would approve something like that. And then reducing sign pollution, that's going on. Again, we don't need too many informational signs everywhere, because then people read nothing. So we're trying to find the signs that are most important. And we're also, trying to improve our enforcement with the parking department, and so far that's been going pretty well. The one thing I'm going to add is street light software program. We've been investigating how to get more data from cars and bikes and people walking in or riding in or driving into town, and that's one of the hardest things to do. So there is a program out there called Streetlight, and the PPRTA may bring that up aboard next year, but I'm going to go ahead and get it going for Manitou for the rest of this year. We're also going to get some help from the chamber, and what it's going to do is give us data. So whoever owns a cell phone, which is most people, we will know if they're driving in here from where and what streets. We'll know if they're walking and when. We'll know when they're riding a bicycle if they carry a cell phone. And so it's going to give us a lot of important information. Like, for example, there was a study at Ruxton of 300 to 500 cars per hour. Well, we can get data from this, and not just data from the last month or the future, but we can get data from the last couple of years, and we can compare how many cars are moving up Ruxton from a couple of years ago to today, and we can see if we're getting some improvements or not. The one thing with transportation and mobility is we got to be really careful, because I know we want to fix everything tomorrow, but for everything we put in place, it affects another part of the system. And so we have to put something in place, we have to watch it in action, and we have to see then what problems it creates, and then try to see if we can fix that problem. So that's why we're not moving too fast as well in this. We're trying to think about what one change has done to the system, or 2 or 3 changes. And then from there, we can make some further adjustments as we go along. So there is some patience needed in that process. So that is the TMMP rundown at this point. I guess I'll stop there and if there are any questions, and then I'll go through the Parking and Mobility Department.
Do we have questions for Roy? Steve?
Yeah, I've got a question about the overflow parking for the COG and what they're supposed to be doing and what they're actually doing. They're supposed to be using the Shriners parking lot on 31st, providing their own shuttle. I think what they're doing is they're telling people to go park at Hiawatha Gardens and using the free shuttle. And I'm concerned that that's overloading our system, because we have so many people doing the incline, so many people trying to park at Hiawatha Gardens, trying to use the free shuttle. I think sometimes the bus is full. There's not room for any more people to get on there. So I'm not sure if that's going to be sustainable. I think we might want to ask the COG to use their plan that they had originally. And we're just getting started. I mean, they're not running the new trains yet. They're supposed to run the new trains July 1st. I'm not sure what's going on, and I'll talk about this a little bit later when we have council correspondence. But I think they're going to be running twice as many trains is what their plan is. So, I mean, things are going to really be hopping. So, anyway, that's my comment on the COG and parking.
I can, when it comes to the Hiawatha parking, last week, I talked to a few visitors that were looking on how to get to the COG. And so I just asked them, I said, well, what did you get from the information on the website? And they were confused. And they said, well, it said something about parking in Hiawatha. And I said, okay, so you did? And they said, no, there was no parking there, so we parked on the side of the street. So they said, where do you get the shuttle? And so I brought them over there and showed them where the shuttle was. And that wasn't the first time someone approached me and I asked. So I think we do have an issue where the off-street, out-of-town parking's not be utilized either enough or at all. I don't know that yet, so we're reaching out to them to talk to them about it. But we do have the same concerns. Our plans at Hiawatha is downtown and incliners, and we can manage the incline reservations pretty well. And when they told us they had out-of-city parking, we were kind of counting on that. And so I agree, the couple of trains that are not up and running yet, the new ones, I know they're not running yet, or they weren't at least not last week, but they will be, and that's going to change even more our traffic. So we have reached out to them, Denise has, and we're trying to meet with them shortly. So I don't know where we're at with that yet, but we're going to try to meet with them this week and discuss some of these concerns that we have right now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Chandler?
So thank you, Steve, Councilor Bremner, for bringing up the elephant in the room. I was sitting here in council when representatives of the COG said to our face, we are going to provide off-site parking for the overflow parking that we are going to generate that is greater than what Manitou can sustain. So they have not done that. I have heard that their concern is they can't find drivers. Perhaps they need to pay them more than a living wage and hire drivers. But You know, one of the hardest things for me was that COG CUP, and I voted for it. And I think we can all agree that traffic and congestion are really some of the primary problems, not only from traffic and congestion, but from an environmental standpoint, a safety standpoint. And I really want to call on this council and staff to hold the COG's feet to the fire with what they said they would do. Because we cannot deal with a traffic and congestion problem if we have more cars, many more cars, than we have parking spaces for, and we knew that ahead of time, and it's going to only get worse. I will also say that I'm going over to Hiawatha Gardens almost every day. I just kind of walk my dog over there, and 3 times in 1 week, I was called upon to help some people with the parking kiosk. I actually think it's one of the reasons why we're the friendliest town is I think council people and staff just go around helping people. They're so grateful. But all of these people said, we have tickets to the COG, and we were directed to park in Hiawatha Gardens. And one individual said that they stopped at the chamber, and the chamber directed them to not go up and park at the COG parking lot, but to park in Hiawatha Gardens. So I had a conversation with someone who volunteers at the chamber, and this individual said, yeah, we are telling people that have COG reservations not to park up at the COG, that for the $10 to $15 in the cost, in addition to your ticket, you can get 10 to 15 hours parking in town. So I'm concerned on so many fronts that we need to have a unified message, and that needs to be including the chamber, including the COG, and this is a good year to have these conversations so that next year we have these things in place, because I'm okay with this being a practice year. Next year, I'm not going to be so generous, especially with promises made and not kept. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? What, Julie?
Thanks. I was curious about the conversations you've been having with the COG, just from reviewing the weekly staff report, which is so helpful, by the way. It's so helpful that you put all that information in that didn't used to be there. From what I see, there are meetings, and then the attitude is, well, Manitou says to the COG, well, you know, it's kind of your city. How do you want to handle this? That's the approach. That's the sense I get. And like when I asked last meeting, why does the city have these huge, gigantic, ugly signs that we own in the middle, right there at the Ruxton roundabout, that says COG parking open? Like, duh. If you have a ticket, you know there's parking. Why are we? And your response wasn't, gee, that's a good point. I'm sure the chamber is upset by how lousy that looks too. Is that much of an impression to our visitors? Instead, you said, I'll see how the COG feels about it. Maybe it's not that necessary. So I'm just concerned about the position that the city is, that we're taking with the COG. Are we asking them to make the decision about how to handle their parking, and just, or are we telling them something? So what is the relationship? I feel like, almost like, you know, the COG is employing Roy, because Roy is always there to try to make sure the COG is happy, and how does the COG feel? And, oh, the COG wants some big signs. Well, let's give it to them. I feel like we're not holding our own and defending our own city. And so I'm curious to know. I haven't seen any reports, although I haven't really searched the bowels of the website, but I haven't seen anything about what goes on with these meetings. Can you give us a little summary?
Just, I'd like to interject. I think Roy has really been working hard for Manitou Springs. Julie, I realize there's a lot going on here. We're trying to negotiate things through an early season, but you know, I've run into Roy on the streets, and he's been working for Manitou, and not for the COG, so I want to clarify
Okay, well,
that.
I believe you, but the
but-
response that he gave us last time is not what you said,
No.
Mayor. The response he gave us last time, and I want this on the record, the response that he gave us last time was, I'll ask the COG if they really think those signs are necessary. It wasn't, oh yeah, it really doesn't look very good, and it sure takes up a lot of room, and it clogs up the city. It was like, I'll ask the COG how they feel. So at least in this one or two instances, I don't mean to suggest that's true for your entire job, and I appreciate Roy, but I am concerned.
Okay, I think we're all concerned and we're all trying to find our way through this, so, okay.
So I will disagree that I stated it that way, and I'd love to look at the audio or listen to the audio. I don't think I stated it that way. And if I did, I apologize. Those signs are the COGs. They're not the cities. So when we were looking at the roundabout, their suggestion initially was having a person down there stopping people and saying, you can't come up or go down Ruxton.
Which is totally illegal and ridiculous.
Right, and that's where I totally agree with you. And so we thought, well, when we used our sign for the incline, we used it there to tell people the incline was closed or you have to do reservations. And it was pretty effective. But that we moved it also from there, we moved it out just before Hiawatha because we figured it'd be better there. And it was effective. So when, instead of having a person there trying to stop people, the suggestion was, well, if maybe we try the sign system, if you guys purchased them, we would try them. I agree with you that the message doesn't make sense because it's open all the time, and that's not the point. The point was if the parking lot was full, or, then that would be the message, but they're not changing it. So we've been trying to get a hold of the COG, and so far I have not talked to them because honestly, they're not responding. So I'm trying to get a hold of them. Denise is reaching out, and I did send them some emails, and I said, I really think we need to move those signs. One of them can go in front of Hiawatha there to let people know if the message changes. And the message needs to be that the COG reservation's required for the COG, not to park at Hiawatha and not to drive into town. So that would be if we used them, and otherwise we don't use them. So that's where the sign thing came from.
So why aren't the signs removed? Why are they still there?
Well, they're not ours, and I
Yeah,
guess
but it's on our property.
well, we can move them, I guess, but
Of course we can move them. I want to know why they're not
I was
moved.
trying to reach out to them to have them move them, and we were waiting for that response.
John, hang tight, we'll give you a chance to talk, John. Roy, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, so I reached out to them several times, and I have not heard back from them. So at this point, I was giving them the opportunity to reach back out, and they did not.
Okay,
So
I
that-
can see that we're all probably have some degree of frustration on this, certainly. Okay, John, do you have some comments, or?
So I want to clarify for the record, we have two big signs right in the middle of the street that are the COG's property, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Julie, do you have anything more right now? Okay. Roy? Okay,
I will work on that tomorrow.
okay, sounds like maybe hardball is.
Yes, trying to
Moving
work with
towards that.
them. We're not getting a response. We'll remove them tomorrow.
Okay, all righty. Counselor Chandler?
First of all, I would like to just reiterate, you do a phenomenal job, and I know you're in the hot seat tonight. And I want to say, for the record, I wish I was surprised. I wish that this is a shock to me, that, oh, there's two signs that are owned by the COG. And I'm livid. I'm livid, and I'm tired of it. I represent the residents of Manitou. I am not beholden to the COG, and we do need to hold their feet to the fire, which is what I said to them when I voted for the CUP. And if they're not responding, then we respond. This is the city of Manitou, and I don't want to wait around for the COG to decide if they want to talk to us or not. We need to take the initiative for our residents and our visitor experience, our tourist experience. We have tourists walking around Manitou, obviously not knowing what the hell to do. And it's not an acceptable tourist experience. It's not an acceptable resident experience. And I'm really, really gonna say one more time, and I am tired of the COG deciding what they're going to do, and then they go jump and we go how high. So I want something done. I want it done quickly, and if they're not going to respond, then we can take those signs down. We can take the COG signs up to the COG property and deposit them up there until they're willing to come back to the table and to negotiate with them. And I'm gonna go one step further, and that if this is what's happening this year, before we have tourist season next year, we sit down as a council and we tie reservations of all kinds to our available parking, whether it's the COG, the incline, or anything else, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay,
So I'll just say I hear you.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. Shall we push on to the part that you're doing in Kevin's absence then?
Yes, sir. So the park and mobility accomplishments for the Parking and Mobility Department, we brought the department in-house. We are receiving some compliments mostly for the customer service and quick response, and some improved enforcement. We're still working on that. We do have, basically we're fully staffed at this point, which hasn't happened in a couple of years, my understanding. The downtown employee parking permit program, when we switched everything over to paid parking in Hiawatha, we took care of the employees at this point for this year, and we're going to talk to the Transportation Parking Board how we move forward with their permits for their employees. Citation collection rate increase. We have 1,111 citations collected in just this month alone, or last month. So it's the highest on record. So they're out there doing their job and enforcing. I rode with them during the MOD shift last Sunday and saw the challenges they have in the RPP areas on street. So it's a tough job. I think they're doing a great job out there as well. The resident parking program for the downtown area, we are going to discuss, and that was part of the pass card type system we're talking about. The T2, the kickoff for the T2 system that you approved for the parking management software is happening this Friday. We have increased foot patrols throughout downtown and a Polaris patrol up Ruxton. And daily activity logs are completed by staff each day, so we know where they're heading, what they're doing, and their patrol routes. The accomplishments, the increased revenue, 2021 over 2019 by almost $11,000, which shows increased enforcement. Increase in citation issuance, which I covered 2021 to over 219. Increase Ruxton Avenue patrols. Adopt the lot program with staff, so staff is assigned a lot and are responsible to watch for problems, whether it's potholes or weeds, and then let the appropriate department know or to take care of it, trash themselves. And continue monitoring occupancy rates in paid parking areas, which they're doing. And with the T2 system, it'll be a little rough, but we're trying to get a turnover rate with that, and data will come in to see how we're doing on the turnover downtown and even in the lots. And then the goals to 2021 completed. We expanded paid parking and adjusted parking fees. And then the goal of balanced occupancy in paid parking areas is something that's still being worked on. And with all the construction, it's put a challenge in that area for us to, with changes in occupancy levels and inventory in town. So, but that's where basically the parking department where they stand today. So if you have any questions.
Questions? I guess not. Let's push on then. Thanks, Roy.
You're welcome.
So we have Human Resources. Kelly?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Padilla from the Human Resource Department. We all know that I am fairly new, barely finishing my almost 4 months now. It's been an exciting and lots of opportunities. I have, one of the biggest goals was to successfully transition an in-house HR from the contractor. I believe that we're well on our way to having a successful partnership with HR and the other departments. A large component that I wanted to take care of right away was the work comp when I came in and saw the large claims. And so what I did was I reviewed them for the last 5 years, and I was able to close about 4 of them immediately. We're still working on one pretty large one, but we're coming to the close of that. When there were claims that were actually completed, but they were never closed out, so they actually charge you. They give you a false charge, basically. So the numbers were skewed a little bit. So I'm currently going through the CIRSA audit, along with the property and liability with the city clerk's office. And I had a discussion with our auditor, and we're looking at some methods to reduce the costs in the future. We have some really great ideas. We're meeting again on this Thursday to start working on a risk and safety plan. Unfortunately, they won't impact a lot of our rates for 2021, but we can certainly create this plan for 2022 and start heading in the right direction thereafter. I did another audit of our benefits, which included medical, dental, vision, life, et cetera, to ensure that we were properly using those benefits. Oftentimes you find some fraud. Sometimes people will insure grandchildren or children that are not theirs legally or things like that. It's amazing, but it does happen. So I just made sure that the proper use of our benefits, and I believe that I have been able to create some savings in that area as well. One of the big goals for this year is we want to complete a organization-wide, with the exclusion of the fire and police department at this time. Police would be separate because they have different parameters, they work different hours, but we would want to do a general city non-sworn compensation study and have that completed by the end of this year. I am currently working on the RFP to send that out, and I will have that completed by July 20th so that we can get that moving, get it posted, and then I also have the selection process put together. And once we have that, and we'll put that together, get that out, once we have our bids in, and I'd really like them to get started mid to end of August so that we can have this completed by the end of December and implement what we can within the budget starting in January of 2022. I don't know if everyone's heard about all these employees, the big wave of people jumping ship. Right now it's the highest bidder wins, and so it's unfortunate. I don't think we've felt as much disruption as some other places, but I do see it coming in the near future as far as losing employees if we're not the most competitive as we can be for the size of our city and our budget. But I think our benefits and our retirement say a lot for us, so we have that going. But I think it's really, really important that we get this done this year and make sure that we can retain and recruit the highest quality possible for every position. Excuse me. I'm also working on a culture survey that we will send out to our staff. Not only do I want to find out what they currently think about the culture, but I want to know what their ideas are. I want to know what they think will create a better culture, their input is very valuable. So it's not just what the department directors think, it's what everybody thinks. And we have to work together to find that great culture of value, transparency, everything that I've talked about since I came on. I did want to mention, it's not on the goal here, but I did want to mention, because Sergeant Ballard mentioned the police chief position. I did want to mention that I am still in review and determining the best method for us to go about the recruitment and hiring of a permanent police chief. And so I will be presenting that to you in the next month or so, if that sounds appropriate. So what, if you want to change that, please? There we go. So the accomplishments thus far, the harassment training, I felt was really critical based on the history, the recent history in the organization. So we had, I scheduled a professional to come in, and he did a HR general EEOC, basically rules, regulations, policies for our directors in addition to the harassment component. And the reason we did that is because it's important to let your management team know what you can be facing legally, technically, what ways should we go around, and how can they help HR in preventing litigation situations. And in addition to that, every employee here was also trained in the harassment. And this was all harassment, sexual harassment, hostile work environments, the whole gamut. It was a 2-hour class for all employees, and it was a 3-hour class for the management trainings. So I'm very excited to have that done. Of course, everyone received a certificate, and that will be an annual training from here on out. In addition to that harassment training annually, we will be adding the ethics training. I have written several standard operating procedures, the SOPs, but the one that stands out the most is the Stop Work Authority. And the purpose of that Stop Work Authority, it's a program designed that provides personnel with the responsibility and obligation to stop work when a perceived unsafe condition or behavior exists and may result in an unwanted event. So actually, Roy has been a big part of doing this, but everyone now has a Stop Work Authority card. Everyone has signed the policy and the procedure so that they understand what they can and cannot do. And it is very clear that anyone pulling a Stop Work Authority cannot be retaliated against in any way, shape, or form. So this just is one first step into our risk and safety management program that I think everyone was very excited about. And I don't know that it's been utilized yet. I haven't received any documentation because there is a form that has to be filled out if it is used. However, we're very excited. This is a great thing for our employees. Of course, HR, we're always concerned with the compliance with the federal regulations. One of the biggest ones this year was the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act that went into effect January 1st. With that being said, I did create a standard operating procedure for this as well. It's currently going through our attorney to ensure that we meet all of the requirements and that we're definitely in compliance with the act. And once that is in compliance, this will be our hiring pay. It actually goes over promotional opportunities, open positions, procedural requirements for those things, hiring processes, to ensure that we are doing everything fairly, equitably, and everyone has an equal opportunity for that job. It was a little unfortunate when I first came that I noticed immediately that the city was out of compliance when it came to employment posters. some people overlook that and they think it's really not a big deal, but unfortunately, it is a big deal. You can be fined pretty heavily if you do not have your posters in place. So within the first couple of weeks, we got the posters ordered and in place. Every department has posters visible in the employee common areas. So we're currently in compliance with FMLA, EEOC, and all the other Department of Labor, et cetera. The employee manual, I'm doing a thorough review. I have actually just finished my first draft, and it has been sent. Denise and Roy and Becca and I are going to sit down and go through the recommended revisions before it comes to the board, but we do anticipate that to come to you by no later than September or October, so that you can review the revisions and we can get that moved forward so it can be effective January 1 of 2022. There's some pretty key things that have to change in there. Equal pay for equal work, the sick pay, the 48 hours for anybody that works 30 hours. Just came out, the state, June 16th, I believe it was, or right about there, there's a state mandate now that there's no longer the ability to have a vacation use or lose it policy. So we have to amend our personnel policy to make sure that we meet that requirement as well. So there are several things that we need to make changes to, and I'm excited to get those to you and get that posted out there. HR, one of the main things I know when I first got here, a lot of departments were struggling with staffing and not having the ability to get the people in, get them interviewed, get them processed in a timely manner. So as I think you've heard several times tonight, there's departments that are fully staffed that haven't been since 2015, et cetera. So I'm very happy that I've been able to assist them and help them manage through that. I'm really excited. It makes a big difference in morale and the way that things operate here. I did train with the Colorado Springs Police Department Human Resources. I spent some time over there primarily going over their hiring practices, their policies and procedures for their personnel, and they are a resource available to me anytime I need them. It was very great to see that Manitou Springs is right in line with Colorado Springs as far as the hiring processes. There really isn't anything that we need to change. So I think that mirroring a lot of their HR policies, procedures for the police department themselves, we are right in line with them. So I'm very, very proud of the police department for maintaining that over these years. And we launched the Employee Recognition Program. It's very similar to what it was before. We called it the Spot Awards, but it is slightly different. We sent out a survey to the employees to see what they wanted, and it came back that they want the Employee Recognition Program. Most people, of course, are wanting the monetary rewards. With the tax processes that have to happen when we give out money, what we've decided, we have taken that into consideration, and we purchased really nice gifts. So when you receive a Spot Award now, you take it to the admin office and you're able to pick out like a nice backpack that says, we've had it embroidered with the City of Manitou Springs, or a 40-ounce metal water or hot bottle, and that has the Manitou Springs insignia. So we have some really nice gifts that our people will love to get. So we're able to recognize the employees, and we're able to give them the gifts to show that, and that boosts the morale big time, shows value. And one other thing that's not on here I did want to mention is that I have also gone to an electronic filing process for HR, the applications, resumes, the new hire documents, everything is going into an electronic file. Of course, that helps us with reducing in the paperwork and the storage processes. And I'm very excited where all the new hires are now in there. We're just working on getting all the former employees, the previous, the current employees that were here in there. So are there any questions?
Counselor Chandler? Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Wolf, I guess you first to the draw.
Okay. Kelly, I just wanted to ask you, I was reading recently about how the city of Colorado Springs hired, I think it was called the Pulse Group, or something with the word pulse in it, to do a survey of all of their public works employees, and they apparently do the survey every 2 years because they mentioned, they were talking about the comparison since 2017, 2019, and then this year. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but in the past, there have been surveys of Manitou employees as to their feelings about their job, their, what did you call it? Oh, culture survey, about that kind of stuff. And it turned out it wasn't at all confidential, and it was a big mess. So I would just urge that you consider an outside consulting firm that would do the analysis in a way that the employees can be assured confidentiality, because there's no point in spending time surveying people when they're concerned that their answers are not going to be confidential. So I just wanted to mention that since you're new.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Other comments? Judith?
Counselor Wolf brought up what I would have brought up. Thank you.
Other council members? Well, I guess something that comes to mind here when we talk about compensation studies, it's my understanding that in late 2017, the city raised pay scale here for city employees quite a bit. That was just at the end of, the council was just finishing up. Jason Wells was the city administrator at that time, and he shortly later left the city. And then I believe again in 2018, the city looked at pay scales for employees and also made some adjustments upwards. I know in talking to at least one of the outgoing council members from the previous council, he felt they'd done a lot to increase the fairness and the compensation levels, and that we should be good for a while. I suppose this is something we can go back and look at periodically, but I worry a little bit that the cities that we're constantly ratcheting up pay scales, perhaps unnecessarily. I want to be fair, but at the same time, we need to be fair to the taxpayers, I think, and labor is a continuing expense. If we're not getting good results from labor, I think we also need to think about that. So there's a balancing act, and I want to pay people for a fair day's pay, but frankly, there are times when I think I want to have a little sticker that says I have get to work authority, because there have been a couple of times I've seen city employees standing around, and by and large, a lot of them are, really dedicated. We've got some people that work really hard, and they're very dedicated and really tied to the community, really have strong roots here. But there are other times when I think maybe that person should be working somewhere else. So that's me. I'm being a little politically incorrect, but that's how I feel. So push forward. I appreciate what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
And, yeah, Judith?
So COVID really changed everything, though. COVID really exposed a phenomenal wage and especially gender pay gap. And what we're seeing now, obviously, is people can be a lot more picky and choosy about the jobs they take. And I was just reading an article today about how it's going to be increasingly harder to find, especially food service types of staff, because of the shortage of good workers. So I applaud, thank you for being here. I think you've done a phenomenal job, and I think that's going to be one of the things that we and other cities, especially small cities, are going to continue to grapple with. So I'm sure that you've already taken that into account, but that's going to be an interesting metric to watch. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is actually really coming to the forefront that the labor shortage is going to be a big challenge. We're facing the results of the COVID, when people are changing their ideals about how they want to work, when they want to work. But we're combining that with the retirement age of the baby boomers. So we're really having a big labor shortage at this time. It will turn around, it'll just take time. But I do think that we have to be very aware of what's going on out there in the industry. We have to be able to also manage this organization and keep well staffed. There's a lot to do here, and I am very sensitive to the budget needs, and I also am very sensitive to the fact that the taxpayer dollars pay the salaries. So I do understand both sides of things, and I do want to create a good balance here. It's just, like you said, it's a difficult one.
Denise?
Two quick things. Is the last time was 2019, I believe it was October or November 2019 was the last adjustment that was voted in on. And we're doing the salary compensation study based on you guys' direction at the goal setting. If you don't want us to do that, we need to know that, because that's the direction we were given, and that's where we're moving forward. So that's why we're moving forward with this, was based on the goal setting, and that was the direction we were given.
Would it be appropriate for us just to hear, to get a sense of how much the pay increase was in 2017 and then you said November 2019?
Yeah, I can research that and we can get that
Yeah.
to all of you so you have it. And it is, know that even when we do the compensation study, it will come back to you of what to approve and what not to approve.
Yeah.
And we have to look at the budget, because that's the biggest part of any organization is personnel. But we also need the personnel to get the work done that you've asked us to do. So we can definitely provide that entire analysis with the compensation study, and I can provide it before that also.
Personally, I think I'd like to see that first before we invest, more time and money with a consultant. And maybe that's the appropriate thing to do, but, I'll ask council for your take on this. If we could take a look at that and then decide how far we want to go with the compensation study, does that seem appropriate, or?
I have a comment on that.
Sure, go ahead.
We've already voted on this. And if we're going to vote on it again, I think we should only vote on it again if the majority of council wants to vote on it again, because we won that vote. And I'm glad we won that vote, and I want this study done. And with all due respect, Mayor, you might not have voted for that, but it is majority rule. So I would object to redoing the goals that were set at our all-day retreat. If you want to schedule a new retreat, that's fine, but I would absolutely object to undoing that vote that we already did.
Okay, Councilor Wolf, I respect your opinion. And I'm fine. Yes, council, that was one of our goals that we decided to add on and have it done by the end of the year. If we want to get it done, that's fine. I'm not sure all of council was aware that there have been 2 pay increases. So we decided to do it. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's spend the money and hire a consultant. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just that having lived through some of that, compensation studies, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, are typically done every couple of years. Mm-hmm. And to just look at pay increases out of context of an entire compensation study can be incredibly misleading. So I, too, am very supportive of the getting a compensation study done by the end of this year. Thank you. I do worry about the budget, but I think it's important for us to have that information and education on compensation, because it is such a complex topic.
The one thing I would say to that is, it's not just compensation that we're looking at. We're looking at benefits. We're looking at vacation, sick time, holidays. Those type of things are also need to be considered into that. The cost of living, those type of things are also considered, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to fall short. Does that mean anything? It means that we're going to get an idea of what our competition looks like and where do we need to be to make sure that we can retain and recruit people when we need to. So I think they are typically done every 2 years. It doesn't mean you have to act on them, and it does cost money, but I think it's very wise to know where you stand, especially in this very difficult workforce right now.
I would also say that one of those, I believe, was a decompression study that we had done, which was also part of the context of the compensation, which is something typically, I mean, that was more of a one-time thing as opposed to continuous compensation study, so.
Nancy, I believe you're correct because they went numerous years without any raise.
Judith?
So I agree and fully support the compensation study. I just wanted to, point of clarification, with regarding the culture survey, I'm in complete agreement that that be completely anonymous, and it was my understanding that that is what Counselor Wolf was referring to with regards to possibly bringing in a consultant. So I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page with that, because I think it's really important for this culture survey to be completely anonymous so that we get really accurate data.
That was very clear, so thank you, though.
Okay, any further questions for Kelly? I guess not. Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Very good. And I believe that we will hear from the city clerk next. Judy?
Hello, Mayor and Council. Judy Morgan, City Clerk. You all know me. So I'm going to try and get through this. Pardon? Okay. I'm going to try and get through this pretty quickly. We've all been here for over 3 hours, so I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. So you can see on the first slide, it talks about our goals. And probably the number one goal I'm dealing with right now is our general election that's coming up. Been working a lot on that lately. We do have the kickoff for that with the packets coming available for candidates on August 3rd. So really just right around the corner. We might also have some discussion on some council meetings about if there's any upcoming questions that need to go on the ballot as well. So, and we do have, I did send something out today, we do have an initiative paperwork that came in, so those petitions will be circulating, just so you all know about that. Our next one has to do with minutes. It was required that we get those ready and out for approval by the next regular meeting. We've been doing that. Records management compliance with state archivist schedule. That is something that is in process, but we are getting that addressed at this point. And that a lot of that helps that we now have that court clerk that's our 2.5 person. It does allow us to focus on some of these larger projects. We have the publishing all ordinances and notices required. That's just a standard thing. We've been doing that. We're at 100% on that. Quarterly reports on budget variances, we're taking care of that as well. Technology recommendations for 2022 budget. I have some of those suggestions that will be going on for the budget. Specifically for this upcoming one, will have to do with our records management and software that really helps the whole city with that. And then training. We currently, our deputy clerk right now, she is doing her first year for the Certified Municipal Clerks Institute, and so that's really exciting. So she's doing those classes are being handled online right now, so she's doing those as they come up throughout the day. And she actually obtained a scholarship for that cost for that, so the city isn't having to pay for that. It's really great of her. And so there are some other trainings that we've had coming up throughout the year that we're addressing and taking care of. So our accomplishments, again, that candidate election, managing that, there's a lot to it, a lot of time, a lot of focus. We have the council meeting logistics, as you know. There's been a lot of changes over the past year with our council meetings and how to make those work, including, just basic things like seating and electrical plugs and things like that. And certainly our technology hasn't been an easy transition. The court records management, we are working on that with organization and management with the state schedule, and that a lot of that has to do with the fact we now have a designated court clerk. Before, our deputy clerk was having to manage that position because we had given that position up during COVID just to help cut costs. And the civic clerk, which is our agenda software update, we've gone to version 8. That happened just recently, so it seems as if everybody's on there and doing pretty good with that. And risk management and ADA training, those, I actually participated in those. Very, very informative, and that ADA training I will be moving forward once the election is not at the top of my list to kind of do some things with that training. We had a Ward 1 resignation and appointment, and so that was quite a little bit of work going into that. We presented the minutes records keeping report to council. We've done some council minute improvements, which has to do with timeliness and accuracy, and we've hired that part-time court clerk. And then the next two slides have to do with statistics. As you can see, the numbers, things have only gone up as far as the amount of things that we are dealing with. One of the things that really was occupying a lot of our time over the past, earlier part of the year was our core requests, and they weren't, it's kind of hard to get a feel for those because some of those can be very simple, but we had some very complicated, very heavy load core requests that we were having to deal with that took a lot of hours, and so we're happy that things have kind of moved beyond that point. And we're back to normal type core requests. And, I wasn't quite done there. Just referencing like CIRSA claims processed, and those have been, we've had quite a few of those to deal with as well. So under court, there's statistics. Everything has gone up. There again, they've been dealing with logistics of court and how to make that work during the time that we didn't have people coming in, and so there were some things that were put in place, and now we're back to having court here in Memorial Hall. A lot of increases in just citations and, the workload that creates, down the line with all the other statistics. So that being said, I tried to make that very quick, move on through. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Questions for Judy? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks. Regarding the ballot initiative that you sent today in particular, could you help us at some point, not tonight, but if there are any boundaries on us for a council regarding advocacy versus education? Ballot initiatives tend to get the community pretty often divided and spun up, and this one will probably do that as well. So I think our role as council members may have some boundaries on it. So at some point, could you help us with that, what those
Sure.
might be?
Sure, I'll be happy to kind of put something together and get that out.
Julie? Okay, Judith, you first.
Just as a quickie, could you refresh me on what the deadlines are for the candidates and also for the ballot initiatives, the deadlines for?
Okay, so as far as the candidates, we do have, like I said, the first day that they can circulate petitions is August 3rd, and the last day to do that and turn in their petitions is August 23rd. And then there's a period of time in there if there's a need to address sufficiency of those, there's like 5 days or something like that. All that, we are actually talking about doing a candidate workshop. And so that will be part of that workshop, is like an orientation of some of those key deadlines and timelines that they will need to have. As far as an initiative, initiatives sort of don't work quite the same way. They don't work off of an end date. They work off of a submission dates and things like that. So there's timelines in there that my timelines are very short. Their timelines are very long. If they get it in a week, that's great. It changes it from turning it in 6 months later, as far as petitions. So it's kind of hard to give those timelines. But I certainly have like a list of all those points that have to be taken care of along the way. So if you wanted to see that, I'd be happy to show it to you.
No, I don't need to see that.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Julie?
Thanks. Mine's fairly quick, too. I'm just wondering, can you email us whatever you received in terms of this initiative so that we can see what you've received?
Okay, so I sent out the summary and today, which is just a little paragraph. If you'd like, I can go ahead and send out the ordinance that they drafted. That is what they're proposing, so.
Oh, I'd love to see the ordinance, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Okay, I can do that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments for Judy? Okay, hearing none, I think we're done with this part of it. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Okay. And I believe next we have city administration.
Mine will be very short because most of it has been.
Denise, you need to sit here at the,
No, I get to sit here.
you sure?
I'm positive. Thank you,
Okay.
though, for the offer. Mine will be very short because most of it's been talked about, but I first need to make a statement, and it's a really important statement. Roy is probably the best employee that this city has, one of the best, and he does not work for anybody but the city of Manitou. He is loyal, he is dedicated, and his customer service is beyond what anybody can ever ask for. He puts in 60 to 70 hours a week. And I really need to make that statement for Roy because he is an amazing employee. And I can guarantee you every decision he makes and everything he does is about serving these residents. And that is really important, I think, to make as a public statement and for you to know the hours that this man puts in and the commitment that he gives to this city. So with that, let me move on to my administrative goals. 2021, we're going to end with a very positive fund balance, probably the best that the city has ever had. We're being very frugally responsible. We are not spending anything, even the URA money, which is capital money, I've said, is absolutely off limits at this point, so that we can end with a positive fund balance as we move forward. And I think that's a positive thing to say about all the employees and how frugal they are being, and especially Becca, how she's watching the budget in every aspect and the controls and balances that we have put in place. The other things pretty much you guys have talked about. I will talk about the leadership training was on April 30th, and then we have another one on October 15th. We continue to do robust KPIs, and in the next year, we'll be able to start looking at some trends. Again, it's only 2 years, so it's hard to set lots of trends, but we'll be able to look at what we've been able to do from there. Sustainability plan is something you guys asked me to do, and so we're moving forward with that. The attorney request, we've really put in some tight guidelines that nobody can reach out to Jeff without going through me, so we know exactly what it is, even from a board's perspective, et cetera. And we've been able to lower his monthly cost, which is great as we move forward. Maintain fiscal responsibility. I talked about the quarterly variances that everybody is doing. We did a strategic plan or a goal setting. I continue to try to build trust and work on trust with council and making sure that there's transparency, trying to send more emails out of things that is occurring that everybody has and work on that. quarterly update in the bulletin. I completed one, getting ready to do another one, reinstated the spot awards, and then I'm going to begin copy with the city administrator. The first one is July 29th at 7 a.m. And then we'll be doing once a month. One will be in the morning and one will be at night. It will be here, and it will just be for anybody that just wants to come in and chat and talk. And if they have concerns, and I get those, we try to work on them and get responses as quickly as possible. So those are big picture. Just from key performance indicators, a couple of quick things I will say. We have 450 mentions in the media. Last year at this time we had 152. So definitely an increase there. 19 applicants for boards and commissioners. Last year we had 23, so that's gone down a little bit. 11 trials. Last year we only had 3, so definitely a few more trials in that area. 203 citations received and processed, and that's in the city clerk's office. And last year we were at 263, so that's also gone down. Utility bills, 9,043. Last year was 8,900. Fire department calls, 473. Last year at this time, 388. And then we go through a couple of other quick comparisons. Planning, 425. RPPs last year at this time 414, so that has increased. Parking citations 117,400. Last year at this time 73,190. So those are some things, and you can go through and look at the rest of these. Potholes filled is 180. Last year at this time it was 62, and we even have more than that because we just got the June KPIs, but that tells you what we've been able to work on and how much we've improved and the numbers that we are tracking. Again, I can't tell you great trends because 2 years doesn't really, or a year and a half doesn't give me a lot of trend data, but we'll continue to look at that. With that, I just want to say I think that tonight was long. It was a lot of information. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. The other thing I do want to comment on is the COG is frustrating, right? And I think we all can feel frustration. We're working diligently at trying to manage this and work through it. We're working diligently at trying to make sure that we have answers. I am personally responsible. I hold myself personally responsible because we went through this and we need to make sure that we're managing it, and we are doing everything right now that we can. It has been escalated to me. I have sent an email to Gary Pearson and have asked for a meeting. So that's where we are right now with this, and I do understand the frustration. I feel it as much as you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Any questions or comments for Denise? Okay, all right. Let's move along then. Receive or act on council correspondence. Does anyone have anything? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just one quick thing. Judy mentioned it, but we've been struggling with a date for the candidate workshop, and it looks like we settled on August 2nd at 6:30 here in Memorial Hall. And I would certainly like to invite all of you to attend, and if you have input for what you think should be there. I did meet with Ken Dre last week because he'd worked on one 2 or 3 years ago, and so I'm still working on the agenda for it, and I would welcome your input and definitely would love to have you there. We're also looking, so Judy will have a big part of it, but we're also looking at having boards and commissions and having them for a little bit of it as well. So just anyone who serves the city in a, quote, voluntary capacity. Thank you.
Nancy, can you give us the time again on the 2nd?
Yeah, August 2nd at 6:30.
Thank you.
Can we have that? Could you put that in the bulletin so that the public
Yeah, and
knows?
Alex has already been assigned to help with the public communication
Great.
for it, yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Anybody else? Steve?
Yeah, this is concerning the COG again, and it's an ongoing issue, and it's not been resolved. The COG working on the tracks all night long. They were working on it last night out there, and a couple nights ago, they were working very loudly, clanging all hours of the night. It's not just me, it's my neighbors who are complaining. And 2 weeks ago, we had our dedication ceremony for the COG as well as for the Summit House. And I participated, I rode up on the COG, it was a great experience. And Nancy Fortune was gracious enough to introduce me to Gary Pearson. And I received his cell phone number. And last week, when I was in Portland, I received some correspondence from, it was also CC'd to Roy and Denise from one of my neighbors about them working on the tracks all night long. So I sent a text to Gary Pearson and I said, they're working on the tracks all night long, violating the noise ordinance, and it's not 1.5 miles up the tracks. It's within city limits. It's right next to the depot. And he responded 5 days ago saying he would look into it ASAP and ascertain what the facts are. I've not received any further correspondence from him. And this has been going on for several weeks now. And I can only characterize it as arrogant to continue working on the tracks all night long, keeping the neighborhood awake, violating the noise ordinance. I'm not sure how to resolve it, whether we need to start finding them. I don't know how to get their attention, but it's not satisfactory. That's all. I filed complaints. Yes. Absolutely. We've been corresponding with Roy and Denise on this very issue. And I know that they've been trying to contact the COG to try and resolve it. But as Roy said tonight, that they're not being responsive. So I don't know how to get their attention. Maybe we just shut down the COG. Maybe that'll get their attention. That's all.
John, did you have a comment there? Okay. Anything else? Julie?
I've received more complaints about the sign litter in town and about how silly a lot of the signs are, especially the parking logic signs that are big and in the wrong place. And then I received more emails complaining that the west end of Manitou Avenue is still too hazardous for people and it should be made safer. I don't know how, I'm not an engineer. But that's still an ongoing concern for the folks living on the west end of town. That's all I have. Oh, and I also want to comment on what Steve Bremner said is we do have laws in this city prohibiting noise. So if the city is going to refuse to issue a fine or to proceed, I'd like to know more about that. So I don't know if that's an agenda item or if it's just something that we just keep bringing up at council correspondence. But I'd like to see the city do something other than tell us how hard they're working and how hard they're trying to get a response from the COG. We don't need a response from the COG. We have our own ordinances, we have our own rules, and we should use them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All right, city administrators report. Roy, do you have anything?
No, I have nothing else tonight.
Okay, thank you. Denise? Okay. All right. Well, in that case, it's a work session, so we're adjourned. Thank you.